Chapter 553. Hatred, who seemed to have everything under his control, didn't notice the slight change in Li Yunxin's expression. In fact, he regarded Li Yunxin's calmness as one of the signs of surrender. His tone softened, and because, even if you kill me here you can't leave. I, the Lord Tongtian, still have some power among the demons in the world. Although those idiots on the ground are fence-sitters who will follow the crowd as long as someone with a little guidance. But you don't have any reputation or power among the demons. You're just an outsider. If you kill me here, if you don't have a great merit that can convince all the demons in the world, your fifth brother Daoist just needs to say a little bit and you'll become the target of everyone. Although you have the subplate in your hand, you're starting to feel tired. At that time, nearly 10,000 demon kings and demon generals will attack you together. You won't be able to escape. I know you're a person who cherishes your life. Although you're brave, you won't make unnecessary sacrifices. Hatred said in a low voice, so, you have no other choice. Li Yunxin stared at Hatred and Daoist for a while and suddenly clenched his teeth. I'm not willing. He lost his composure and shouted, I'm not willing. Why, I risked my life to get this treasure. It turns out to be such a powerful treasure. Now I have to give it to you? I'm not willing. At this point he didn't seem to want to talk in secret anymore. He wanted all the demons in the world to hear him and let everyone know. So he used his supernatural power again. It's you and Zither lady who hurt me. He clenched his teeth and said gloomily. In this way his voice was not as weak as when he talked in secret. People could only hear his anger. You two asked me to go to Xianmen to find out the truth. I thought it was dangerous, but it was also for the prosperity of the demon race. So I went. But after I did it, you hurt me. Do you dare to tell me how you hurt me? Hatred and Daoist looked at each other and sighed helplessly. This Li Yunxin, it was one thing that she didn't know what was in her hands. Now that he knew, he couldn't bear to hand it over. But if he didn't do that, he wouldn't be able to live. In the end, he lost his composure and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Looking at his usual appearance, it was really lamentable that he had such moments now. However, it was also laughable. The funny thing was, did he think that he could win the sympathy of all the demons in the world by saying that he was wronged and that he was framed? You still don't understand the demons. Since Li Yunxin had such a wish, the Lord Tongtian used his divine sense and spoke. He looked at Li Yunxin with pity. Do you think this is a secular court, ninth brother? A victim tearfully confesses his grievances and how he was framed in court, and then can he get sympathy? Ah! Hatred burst into laughter. You can ask the demon kings and demon generals down there. If they really know that you are wronged and stupid and that you have fallen into our trap and ended up in a pitiful situation. His smile faded. Will they sympathize with you, stand up for you, help you up, or will they step on you with 1 foot each and trample you into the mud? What Yazi said before was right. The demon kings were indeed people who didn't have a standpoint. And the Lord Tongtian himself was indeed quite powerful among the demons. When Li Yunxin was arrogant and scolded the Lord Daoist, they cheered and applauded him. Until now, when Hatred said this, even though he was still restrained, the demons all burst into laughter as if another year had passed. But this laughter was mocking Li Yunxin. This demon transformed from a mortal was really ridiculous. He still had the ridiculous thoughts of a mortal. Li Yunxin looked at a loss for a moment, as if he didn't expect such an outcome. Seeing him like this, Hatred realized that it was a good time to shatter his hope and pride. So he snorted coldly. If you want to humiliate yourself, I don't mind wasting my breath to talk to you. Ninth brother, what you want to say and feel wronged is, the young dragon master and I wanted to know what was going on in the Mystic Gate, so you volunteered to go there. Then you found out that the young dragon master doubted your stand and planted a restriction in your body, right? Hatred smiled coldly. Which of the demon kings didn't use such a trick? Do you think you are like those idiots in the mortal world, using people without suspicion? At this point, the demons all cheered and agreed. But the evil lord and Bai Yunxin frowned slightly. Previously, the three of them had a secret conversation in the sky. It didn't last long, so they couldn't hear it. They didn't use their supernatural power to eavesdrop. Once they did that, the three of them would know. They were asking for a snub. Therefore, when they saw Li Yunxin and Hatred's attitude suddenly change, and suddenly talking about grievance and humiliation, they were confused. But after all, the evil lord shook his head lightly. Everything was within her expectations. Li Yunxin didn't dare to kill the Lord Tongtian. Sigh. She turned her head slightly to look at her daughter. She saw the slight disappointment and loneliness on Bai Yunxin's face, as if the Li Yunxin in her heart shouldn't be like this. He shouldn't be in such a passive position. At this moment, Hatred said again, "Later on, when you were on the battlefield, the words you said before you faked your death were considered to be courageous. If you really died at that time, the heroes might still feel sentimental when they talk about you in the future. But it's a pity that you jumped out and did these things. You forced me to say all these. Have you thought about how the demon kings would feel when they see you now?" As he said this, he glanced sideways at the mountains. Immediately, the demon kings and demon generals started to make noise again, letting out waves of laughter. At least there was one thing that the Lord Tongtian was right. Demons respected the strong the most. They respected the strong, but they weren't willing to submit to the strong. This sounded contradictory, but it wasn't inexplicable. They weren't smart enough, but they were brave enough. Naturally, they respected the strong. But because of this, they weren't used to human etiquette and morality. They were naturally rebellious. Although they respected the strong, it was difficult for them to become servile like humans. Moreover, human morality was extremely weak in them. But now that they heard about Li Yunxin's tragic past, they didn't think that Hatred and the young dragon master went too far. They often did this kind of thing. They only felt that the victim was too stupid. In essence, human law and morality are also to protect the weak and maintain the stability of society. However, the number of demons was very small. It was difficult for them to form a large and stable society. Like humans, things like law and morality were of little value to them. Therefore, it was the opposite of human society. The weak were not only not protected, they were better off dead. Because when they died, there would be more space and resources for the strong. Amidst the laughter, Bai Yunxin widened her eyes. "Jun Shang, I'll go take down that Hatred." Hatred was seriously injured and only had half a head left. Although he looked majestic, he was no match for Bai Yunxin in a real fight, nor was he a match for the current Li Yunxin. Although this female demon was fierce and cruel, it was only from a human's point of view. Compared to other demons, she was more like a human. Because her father was Golden Rock and her mother was Chao Feng. Both of them were great demons with high cultivation levels, and they had been influenced by the human world. But the evil lord pulled her back. "If you don't want to hurt him, don't do it. If something happens to Hatred, Lord Taoist is still here." Li Yunxin was Dragon's son, but even Big Brother, Second Brother and Fifth Brother couldn't tolerate him, let alone the demons. He had only become a demon for a few months. He didn't have any great achievements or powerful methods, so the demon kings all treated him as a human. Under such circumstances, a human killed a famous great demon. No matter how stupid the demon kings were, they would know what to do. Looking at this scene, Fifth Brother and Second Brother seemed to have planned this for a long time. When she said this, she heard Li Yunxin shouting angrily in the sky, "But you killed all the demons in the world and wanted to use the souls of demons to refine?" Hatred didn't even want to hear him finish. He laughed and said, "So what? Those who are dead are already dead. Can they still come and settle the score with me? All the demon kings here are alive. What does it have to do with them? But there are so many fertile lands left for the rest of the demon kings and demon generals to share. They can't wait to thank me." Ah! What he said was not exaggerated. Otherwise, when Li Yunxin drove the two skeletons to the evil lord's side, how could Bai Yunxin persuade the demons under the evil lord to fight the skeletons? Wasn't it the same as what they said about dividing the world? The human dynasty complained that the territory was not big enough, and the demons also complained that the territory was not big enough. In the words of Li Yunxin's world, the demons had to adopt some extensive management methods under the pressure of Xianmen. The great demon didn't dare to show his divinity everywhere, and didn't dare to gather incense on a large scale. He could only let his name spread among the people to a limited extent. So although there were indeed demons in this world and there were indeed rumors about them, most people only took the rumors as legends. They were between believing and not believing. The power of faith brought by this kind of faith was very thin. Because of this, the demons needed more land and more people in order to make their cultivation progress extremely slowly. And just like the dragon cult that Li Yunxin created in the city of Wei, maybe it was the so-called intensive management in his previous world, there weren't many people who believed in him, but most of them were fanatics. The quantity was small, but the quality was high. Could also bring him a strong power of faith. However, he had only dared to do so because he had a chance to do so. He didn't do it for incense but to lure people into the trap. As a result, even though Yazi said so openly, those monster kings really didn't have any reaction. Although some of their friends died, the meaning of these words in the world of demons was different from the world of humans. They just mumbled a few more words and then stopped. Even if there was really injustice, they were like Bai Yunxin's thoughts, wrapped up by more emotions. They couldn't stir up any waves. Finally, Hatred stopped laughing. He stared at Li Yunxin silently and calmly for a while and said in a low voice, "So, ninth brother, why make a fool of yourself in front of the heroes of the world? Only the strong deserve to have great power. There is a saying in the secular world, treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Now that you have great power, it will only bring trouble and disaster to yourself." Hatred smiled and shook his head. At the same time he pointed at the ground, "Those on the ground are your trouble and disaster." Behind Hatred, the Taoist lord also smiled coldly, "Humph, seeing how cowardly you are now, you should know your place. Li Yunxin handed over and I can guarantee that you won't die. What I said is true." The Fiend Lord also sighed softly. Then, he heard Li Yunxin also laugh. This laugh came very strangely. He was originally very angry, but now he relaxed as if he was relieved of a heavy burden. Then Li Yunxin also stopped smiling. The calm expression on his face was very similar to that of Hatred. He said sincerely, "Second brother and fifth brother misunderstood. I want second brother to tell me what happened before, not to make a fool of myself. How can I not know the habits of the demons in the world? How can I not cherish my life? So, second brother and fifth brother think that since I cherish my life, I won't fight to the death here, and I will hand over the heaven and earth mother disk in exchange for my own life. Their thinking is very correct. If I were in your position I would also do the same, break force with force with force. It feels great to make someone who is far more powerful than me yield to me." But, Li Yunxin paused. At this moment Hatred and Tao Wu both frowned slightly. They finally realized that there was something wrong with Li Yunxin's tone. It was too calm. Then they heard Li Yunxin continue, "But first, I have always been a person who doesn't care much about worldly possessions such as Dharma treasures. I have died many times and I don't care much about life and death. Second, I once promised the ninth young master one thing. If I promise someone else, if I find it difficult, it's okay to break my promise. But if I can do it, there is no reason not to do it. Third, second brother said that the demon kings below are trouble and I agree. But since it is difficult for me to solve the trouble, then I will solve the troublemaker. Fourth," Tao Wu frowned and interrupted him, "Don't give me that 1, 2, 3 for crap. I hate this kind of tone the most in my life. If you have something to say." Li Yunxin sighed and said, "All right." Then he exerted a little force, and the iron chain in his palm clattered and clattered. That Hatred was tied up by the iron chain and had no place to borrow strength. Therefore he was pulled over effortlessly like a kite. The dragon son of the conferred Lord Tong Tian frowned, "If you—" But his words stopped abruptly. Li Yunxin raised his right hand naturally and inserted it into the half of his head that was missing. In fact, because the wound had begun to heal gradually, Li Yunxin's finger didn't go in the first time. But he calmly raised his finger and tapped on the wound with the newly grown sharp nail. During this short period of time, Hatred frowned, as if he was angry and confused by Li Yunxin's extremely rude action. But soon Li Yunxin's hand reached into his head and turned it over again. Hatred's expression finally froze on his face, and soon became distorted because of the loosening of his facial muscles. The incarnation of Lord Wei River, which was formed by the earth chi in this battlefield, had great power. He crushed the second dragon son's brain as if he was crushing a piece of tofu. Then, when everyone suddenly became strangely silent and at a loss, Hatred's head was smashed with a bang. The headless corpse of the Lord Tong Tian fell on the land that used to be his Taoist field. And two extremely faint figures were hooked by the iron chain and disappeared into the sleeve of the incarnation in a flash. At this time, Li Yunxin's incarnation shook his hand and sighed. He said to the Lord Taoist, whose expression seemed to be locked, "Alas. In fact, the reason why I called the second brother so much was not to make a fool of myself. But these things were not said by him but by me. No one believed it. Since he said it, I have to let everyone in the world know. Anyone who offends me and makes me suffer, even if it's my second brother, I will kill him without hesitation. But it's a pity that brothers kill each other and brothers fight each other. It's really a tragedy in the world. I can't bear to see it." He looked at the Lord Taoist sadly. "The fifth brother and the second brother are good friends. Do you want to accompany him?" The Tao Lord finally snapped out of his daze, which lasted for several breaths. His robe billowed like a raging flame, and his eyes looked as if they were about to drip blood. "How dare you? There are many things I dare to do. My courage is also greater than you can imagine." Li Yunxin raised his eyebrows, and the whole sky also became gloomy because of his momentum. "Take a guess, what else do I dare to do?" The Lord Taoist's figure suddenly retreated 100 feet, and his voice sounded like muffled thunder in this space. "Do you see the power of this Li Yunxin? A few months ago he was just in the transcendent state, but now he can kill the Lord Tong Tian. It's because he has a treasure in his hand called the Mother and Child Plate of Heaven and Earth, and whoever gets it will become the master of the demons. If someone above the true state gets it, he can immediately advance to the Grand Supreme. The Lord Taoist retreated another 100 feet and shouted, "He and the treasure are both on the Cloud Mountain, but they haven't been completely refined, so they can't use it as they wish. Die or become the master of the world, it's up to you." Chapter 554. However, although demons were demons, they had taken human form and still had emotions. When they had emotions, they would be surprised and dumbfounded. Now they saw, not long ago, Lord Tongtian Long Air was still in the sky majestically, and Li Yunxin looked embarrassed and cowardly. But now, Lord Tongtian was killed. Many muddle-headed demons didn't even understand what Li Yunxin said after that. They only knew that the 9th Dragon Son suddenly turned hostile and killed another one in front of all the demons and 2 Mystic Realm Dragon Son. They were shocked, speechless for a long time. The entire mountain was deathly still. Even the Fiend Lord, who had seen much of the world and had been through hundreds of battles, was frowning at this moment. He stared at the illusion of Li Yunxin high up in the sky. After a dozen breaths, the Tao Lord retreated another few hundred feet before saying, "What is he trying to do?" Bai Yunxin's face was really white. But it was ghastly. Because she knew what Li Yunxin meant by doing this. The remaining demon kings in the mountain were all battle-hardened. In terms of combat power, they were the elites among the elites of the demons in the world. Although the words justice and reason were a joke in the world of demons, they could always be used as an excuse and an entry point, just like how they were used by the real nobles in the mortal world. Lord Tongtian had always been famous and he was the elder brother. It was fine if Li Yunxin killed him somewhere else. But if he killed him in front of all the demons, the Taoist Lord had a reason. He immediately retreated 2,000 feet to save his own life and then encouraged the demons to swarm him. The Fiend Lord and Bai Yunxin didn't know what the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate was. However, looking at the Taoist Lord and Li Yunxin's behavior, they could roughly guess that it was the legendary treasure that could control all the demons in the world. Previously, the demon monarchs had charged forward bravely on the battlefield because many people wanted to obtain it. After the rain of fire, many demons fled into the mountains but did not leave. It was also because they did not want to let go of that thing and wanted to stay and observe the situation. A demon's desire was far stronger than a mortal's. And this strong desire was not restrained by the ethics and morals of the secular world, so it grew stronger. Before this treasure only existed in legends. However, looking at Li Yunxin's methods now, it seemed to be true. Such a thing was right in front of him, and the Tao Lord had said that Li Yunxin had yet to completely refine it. It was becoming more and more difficult to control it. Most likely, none of the demon kings would leave obediently. They would all attack Yunshan from all sides and seize the treasure. Now, this Li Yunxin was only one person. Previously, when there were tens of thousands of cultivators from the celestial sect of wonders blocking the attack, a group of demons shouted and rushed hundreds of miles forward. At this point, how could he stop them? Was he courting death? Just for a breath of air? What did he mean by, "I will kill anyone who offends me and causes me to suffer losses, even if it is my second brother"? After about 10 breaths of silence, the evil Lord and Bai Yunxin heard a voice. The voice was not loud, but it reverberated in the sky above the mountains. There was even a hint of demonic aura. However, this voice sounded like thunder at this moment. "Tao Lord, is the Heaven and Earth Mother and Child Plate you mentioned true? Don't use us as your weapons, and get involved in the civil war between you brothers." She sounded like a female demon. His tone was calm and composed, not anxious at all. However, everyone knew what would happen once these questions were answered without any doubt. After this voice, the mountains were still silent. At this moment, the Tao Lord had already retreated 3,000 feet. From afar he was just a small red dot. However, his voice did not soften at all. His tone was firm. "When have I, the Tao Lord, ever deceived anyone?" However, the demons did not fall for his trick and remained silent. He continued, Okay, since you want to know, watch." After saying this, he rubbed his hands. Immediately, a small shiny thing flew from his palms into the air. The thing flew so fast that no one could see it clearly for a moment. However, the next moment, the little thing flew to the center of the field and immediately radiated colorful lights. The demons thought that it was some kind of supernatural power and were slightly shocked. However, they soon realized that it was nothing else but an image. A huge and blurry image appeared in midair. Everyone on the mountain could see it clearly. At this moment, the illusion of Li Yunxin was still standing quietly in the sky. He did not speak nor did he leave. There was no expression on his face. It was as if the person controlling the illusion was busy with other things and had no time to care about it. Therefore, the first thing that the Demon King saw was a blood-red eye. It seemed that the owner of the blood-red eye had fallen to the ground. The artifact that captured this image was facing this face and was extremely close to it. Therefore, half of this person's face occupied half of the sky. The rest was blue. The eyes were very round and looked like the eyes of the Tao Lord. There was no blood on his face. It was very pure white. It was as if there was a mask on his face without even a single pore. However, the faint golden pupil in the blood-red eye flickered slightly, as if it was about to be extinguished. It seemed to mean that the life of the owner of this face was about to end. This image recorded what he looked like when he was dying. All the demon kings were shocked and confused. They didn't know what the Tao Lord was doing. Suddenly the image shook again. And the person who fell to the ground began to speak. All the demon kings came from every corner of the Midland. In many areas of the Midland, the languages spoken by the people were different as well, and were quite different from each other. Spirit creatures had become human beings. In order to communicate with each other, they naturally had to speak the human language. Otherwise, they couldn't just meow and bark every time they saw each other. Therefore, the demon kings all had different accents, as if they were tourists from different parts of the world. However, none of the spirit creatures seemed to have heard the words of the person in the image. The accent was very strange and the words he used were also very strange. But the strange thing was that after hearing his words, they weren't completely clueless. They could understand some of the words he said. However, this person was about to die, so he couldn't speak clearly. All the spirit creatures could hear were some words and a few sentences. Then founded God's era? Ridiculous. Mother Universe Plate? The power to conquer the world. Avenge me. Destroy all the gods in the world. Only the last 6 words were said in a coherent and forceful manner. But after saying these 6 words, his blood-red eyes suddenly became lifeless. Even the mysterious light in his eyes disappeared. The Tao Lord immediately waved his hand again, and the shiny little thing immediately flew back into his palm. However, the illusion in the sky didn't dissipate immediately. It was still there. When he released it, none of the demon kings noticed. But now that he wanted to take it back, many people paid attention. Therefore, more than one person could clearly see that the thing actually looked like a jade slip. It was a completely transparent jade scroll. After watching and listening to this, the group of spirit creatures seemed to be discussing noisily for a while. Then the demonic voice said, "The Tao Lord is very powerful. It's not difficult for him to use some tricks to create this illusion to fool us." The Tao Lord snorted coldly in the sky. "Look up in the sky and see what you can see." The group of spirit creatures then carefully looked at the sky that was presented by the illusion for a while. After a while, a voice exclaimed softly, Is that thing Cloud Mountain?" His exclamation caused the group of spirit creatures to make noise for a while. In the end, everyone saw, the sky behind the face was slightly gloomy, and there were thick clouds. The face fell to the ground and the wind seemed to be quite strong. Therefore, from time to time the wind would blow, making the scene even more blurry. Originally, people would not pay attention to the background behind him, but after being reminded by the voice, they realized that in the gloomy sky, there seemed to be something floating in the sky far away. Its size and shape were similar to the huge cloud mountain that was currently on the ground. The only difference was that there seemed to be some crisscrossing things on the surface of the thing, as if it was building something. In other words, the huge cloud mountain was being built or modified. This discovery made the group of spirit creatures gasp. Everyone knew that Cloud Mountain was built by the Celestials for those stinky Taoists to live in. But no one knew when exactly it was built, so they tacitly agreed that the history of Cloud Mountain was as long as this world. Then the scene that appeared in the sky now, wasn't it the scene when this world was first created? Or, the scene that you are seeing is the scene before this life and the previous life. The Taoist Lord's deep and powerful voice sounded at this time. The heaven and earth mother and child plate of Cloud Mountain is also a relic of a deity in the previous life. Now that you have seen this, do you still have any doubts? If one had to say that there were doubts, naturally there were. For example, many of the demon kings in the mountain could also use their supernatural powers to create such an image. But the problem was, unless the Taoist Lord had foreseen Long Air's death and Li Yunxin causing such a scene in advance. Otherwise, he would not have been able to create such a thing in advance. At this time they heard someone shouting from the direction of the foot of Cloud Mountain in the distance. Yes, yes. There are indeed treasures on Cloud Mountain, many treasures, and also the heaven and earth mother and child plate. There are many elixirs. Eating them can make you immortal and improve your power greatly. There are also many divine weapons and precious armors. They are all relics of the previous sages. Now that the defense in Cloud Mountain is weak, what are you waiting for? Then the shouting person's figure shot over like lightning. The demon kings focused their eyes and immediately burst into an uproar. The person who came was a Taoist priest, wearing the robe of a high-level cultivator in the Shenmen. But this person's hair was disheveled, and his expression was crazy. It seemed that he did not care that he had broken into the gathering place of the demons, nor was he worried that he would be torn apart alive by the demons. He stood high in the sky and waved his hands and feet, saying, "I know how to enter Cloud Mountain. I'll take you there. You can take the treasures, and kill Li Yunxin." But a demon shouted angrily, "Where did this person come from? What nonsense are you saying? Tear him alive and sacrifice him to my brother." This person shouted angrily, "I'm Su Yusong, the master of calligraphy of Cloud Mountain. How dare you, demon?" The demons originally wanted to rush up into the sky and blast him down. But when they heard him call himself the master of calligraphy, they immediately roared with laughter. This guy's appearance was ferocious and ugly, like an evil ghost. His Taoist robe was also tattered and stained with blood. With such an appearance, no one would believe him even if he was a sect master or a sect master, let alone a sage. When they laughed like this, the person was immediately annoyed. Suddenly he stopped smiling, gritted his teeth and winked. "You don't believe me? Don't believe me? Don't believe me? Bah. I'm Su Yusong, the master of Cloud Mountain." After he said this, his body suddenly shook. After this shake, his body expanded and golden mystic light burst out from his body. It was as if a god was hidden under his tattered clothes and unkempt appearance. In the blink of an eye, a golden divine lord that was 1,000 feet tall appeared in this world. Wasn't this the appearance of Su Yusong, the master of Cloud Mountain, and Zhuamuxia on the battlefield a few days ago? The demons were dead silent, and then there was an uproar. Instantly, hundreds of figures soared into the sky and were about to blast him down. However, the Taoist lord, who was originally in the distance, appeared in a flash and stopped those demons. He shouted, "What's the rush? Don't you see how he looks now? Do you need to lower yourselves to attack him? It won't be too late to ask him first." After saying this, he immediately turned to look at Su Yusong. "Master of Cloud Mountain, let me ask you, is it true that there is a Mother Universe plate on Cloud Mountain?" In fact, the huge golden figure disappeared as soon as it appeared. After it disappeared, the person's expression seemed to be much more haggard. It seemed that he had forcefully used up a lot of essence qi. At this moment, when he heard the Taoist lord's question, he immediately said eagerly, Yes. I've seen that Mother Universe plate when I was a sage, but I don't know how to use it. It's just a small plate, golden and shiny." The Taoist lord coughed and interrupted him, then shouted, "You also said that you know how to enter Cloud Mountain. Is that true?" The person said again, "Of course it's true. Although there must be restrictions at the entrance, it's better than all of you rushing in randomly." At this moment, someone among the demons shouted, "Don't listen to his nonsense. Maybe the celestial sect sent him here to harm people?" However, the Taoist lord ignored him and said, "Let me ask you again, since you're the sage of the celestial sect, how did you end up like this? Why did you ask us to attack Cloud Mountain?" The person immediately looked up and laughed deafeningly. "Ah, what? You just want that Li Yunxin to die." The Taoist lord gave him a few looks. It was unknown if the person understood, but he continued to shout, "That Li Yunxin snuck into Cloud Mountain and stole that Mother Universe plate." His power increased greatly. He cast evil spells and sent fiery rain demons to capture the celestial sect and the demons in one fell swoop. Didn't you see it? Then he killed my lover. He destroyed my physical body. I have to take revenge. I have to. At this moment, the demons could see that this person had already gone mad. But no matter what, Li Yunxin showed extraordinary means to kill Lord Tongtian, and then the Taoist lord released the video to explain the origin of the Mother Universe plate. Now that the sage of Cloud Mountain who had gone mad came to testify, it was actually enough. In the past, the demons could be encouraged to attack Cloud Mountain because of a rumor, let alone now that there was conclusive evidence. Their last trace of hesitation was also dispelled, and they were all excited. But at this moment, the illusion of Li Yunxin, who had not moved for a long time and stood in the sky in a daze, became lively again. Chapter 555. It was as if a clay statue had suddenly been injected with life. The body of the illusion moved. Its gaze swept to the side and below, and it saw Su Yusong, whose obsession had been broken. This person had seized the bodies of other wandering souls and wanted to return to Cloud Mountain for revenge. However, Li Yunxin had blocked him outside. Now he looked more and more embarrassed. Then, hundreds of big demons jumped into the sky. They had been watching Dragon Sun's internal fight from the mountain. Now that they knew that the things in Cloud Mountain were very beneficial to them, they no longer wanted to be bystanders. They wanted to be the main characters. A demon asked him with a ferocious look, "Li Yunxin, are they telling the truth?" As soon as he opened his mouth, a demon king shouted, "Why are you asking him? Could it be that he would admit defeat? Why don't we fight our way into Cloud Mountain and find out?" Another group of demon kings echoed, "Yes, yes. Cloud Mountain is the ancestral court of Xianmen. Wow, we have accomplished what we haven't done for tens of thousands of years. Won't we be famous for eternity?" Someone sneered, "Bah, famous for eternity? Why would those people remember you, a demon, for eternity?" Someone retorted, "You're the one talking nonsense. Once we take down Cloud Mountain, the world will be ours. He will remember it however I want him to." In the time it took for them to say 7 to 8 sentences, they became angry again as if they were about to fight. However, they kept talking about fighting their way up Cloud Mountain, but they didn't leave. They were waiting for Li Yunxin's words. It was as if he had to say something to give them more courage. It seemed that Xianmen and Cloud Mountain's suppression of the demons for tens of thousands of years had left a deep shadow in their hearts. Even now, when the saints of Xianmen were in such a sorry state and the desire in their hearts was burning, these big demons were still hesitating. It showed how powerful they were in the past. How could the Taoist Lord and Su Yusong not know? The Taoist Lord glanced at the ground and saw the evil Lord and Bai Yunxin. Like Li Yunxin, he had some kind of mystical technique that allowed him to see through the evil Lord's condition. Therefore, he knew that she was heavily injured, so he could only remain silent and neutral in the battle between him and Li Yunxin. However, the female demon beside her, Bai Yunxin, seemed to be restless. She was twisting the evil Lord's hand as if she wanted to do something. But his third sister, Chao Feng, stared at her sternly and said something to her, as if trying to persuade her. Bai Yunxin looked up at the sky and was about to speak. Seeing this, the Taoist Lord immediately shouted at Li Yunxin's illusion, "Now that things have come to this, you have no choice but to admit it. When we kill our way into Cloud Mountain, why wouldn't I?" However, the illusion of Li Yunxin suddenly opened his mouth after a long silence. His tone sounded very calm, as if he was just having a casual chat. There was also a hint of helplessness in his voice. "If there is, then there is. There was indeed a treasure in Cloud Mountain, the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate. It is extremely powerful. It is the legendary treasure that can control all the demons." He paused for a while and the sky became quiet. The Taoist Lord and the Demon Kings didn't expect him to say these words. Was he going to hand over the treasure? If he was going to hand it over, why didn't he hand it over just now? He rolled his eyes and sighed. "Of course that's your way of saying it. But in fact, the Taoist Lord immediately knew that he was going to start talking nonsense. He shouted, "Don't listen to his nonsense. That treasure is indeed very powerful." Li Yunxin sighed again. Yes, yes, yes. Fifth brother is right. That treasure is indeed very powerful. In fact, it is not only able to control all the demons. Even the Black Bai Yanjun, who controls all the demons, the Xianmen, and all the living beings in the world, can do it." The Taoist Lord was stunned. He really didn't know what he was going to say. Hearing that Li Yunxin himself said that the treasure was so tempting, another demon opened his eyes wide. "Really? Really? Oh my. Then hand it over to me." As soon as he shouted, the other demon kings scolded, "Bullsh *T. Why is it you?" It looked as if the noise was about to break out again. Li Yunxin raised her voice and said, "Dear kings, please calm down. Listen to me carefully. After listening, you will understand why my fifth brother wants to harm you." The Taoist Lord frowned. "Don't listen to him." Li Yunxin ignored him and continued, "Let me tell you how to use this treasure. This treasure actually shrinks the whole world on an iron plate. On the iron plate, there is black and white flowing gold that represents the earth chi. You can change the direction of the flowing gold on the iron plate, and you can change the chi of the world. It is thanks to this treasure that I am able to lock all of you on this battlefield. But I didn't do the fire rain before. If you really want to know, you should ask my big brother and fifth brother." When the Taoist Lord heard this, he knew something was wrong. He didn't know what Li Yunxin was going to do. Therefore, a gust of wind from his palm attacked from afar, trying to disperse Li Yunxin's image. He shouted again, "Don't be bewitched by him." However, before the gust of wind reached him, a white figure suddenly rushed into the sky and blocked it. The person who came was full of demonic energy and had a shocking aura. The demon kings focused their eyes and saw that it was the famous female demon, Bai Yunxin. The white phoenix stopped in front of Li Yunxin's illusion and frowned. "Dragon Fifth, are you guilty? Why don't you let him finish? Do you really want to harm us?" The smoke on the Taoist lord's body thickened, but then it became hazy again. "Good. You're protecting a good lover. Then I'll listen to him and see what else he has up his sleeves." Bai Yunxin glared at him. She glared at the demon kings beside her until they retreated and said, "Li Yunxin, speak." Li Yunxin's illusion coughed softly. "Thank you, Miss Bai. In that case, let me continue. Monster kings, let me ask you first. Do you know why we demons have been suppressed by the celestial sect of wonders for the past tens of thousands of years?" Many demons had probably thought about this question. However, most of them were unable to understand it. With the knowledge and brains of the demons, how could they answer it? Thus, there was a moment of silence and some demon kings were impatient. Bai Yunxin rolled her eyes and said, "Well, it's naturally because the celestial sect of wonders is powerful. There are more high-level cultivators in the celestial sect of wonders than us, and they know how to manage and organize. It's just like how an army in the secular world is always stronger than a plate of scattered sand." Li Yunxin continued, "Miss Bai is extremely smart. Let me ask Miss Bai again, why are there more high-level cultivators in the celestial sect of wonders than us, and why are they stronger than us?" The two of them began to play a question-and-answer game, and one of the demon kings became impatient. He suddenly leaped forward and scolded, "You pair of dogs." However, the moment he stepped forward, many of the demon kings around him carefully moved to the side. Thus he only said half of his sentence. The previously solemn and dignified Bai Yunxin's eyes suddenly burst with two terrifying rays of light. She stretched her arms forward, and no one could see clearly whether the space between the two transformed into a pair of giant claws or wings. That guy was immediately torn into two halves and a rain of blood splashed down. This was a demon king at the peak of the true state. Actually, he wouldn't have been killed so easily. This was because, to demons, this kind of scolding was like a joke between humans, even if he thought about it. However, he was a demon king from the west, and didn't understand Bai Yunxin's temperament as well as these demon kings near the Central Plains. This female demon was famous for not being able to joke around, and she was also very bold. How many demons in the world dared to go to Cloud Mountain to ask for the feather robe several times? Thus, when he saw that this guy didn't know what was good for him and spoke nonsense, he knew that he was in trouble and quickly dodged to the side, afraid that he would be splashed with blood. The demon who scolded him died, and his lonely soul stood in the air for a while, as if he didn't understand how a demon at the peak of the true state could become a lonely wild ghost. However, before he could move again, Li Yunxin's green iron chain curled over and hooked his soul, keeping it somewhere unknown. This man and woman killed people and the other hooked souls. However, there was no change in his expression, as if he had just killed a mosquito. This scene made the demons a little nervous, because they didn't pay attention before. Now that they saw Bai Yunxin, they looked in the direction where she came from. Thus, they saw the evil lord. At this moment, the evil lord was watching everything coldly, not saying a word. At this time, the desire that they had been stimulated by the Tao Lord and Su Yusong had to cool down a little. Bai Yunxin clapped her hands and said, "This question is easy to answer. The cultivators of the Xianmen have cultivation methods that can be passed down, but we don't. They have cultivation methods, and there are many dynasties in the human world under their rule. Thus, they can slowly pick out those with good qualifications, and with the help of a master, pills and cultivation methods, their progress is naturally very fast. Unlike us demons, there are fewer of them and they don't have cultivation methods. They still have to fight with each other, so of course their progress is very slow." Speaking of this, Li Yunxin smiled again. "Well said, Miss Bai. However, I still have to say that human cultivation needs to consider the efforts of individuals, and also the general trend of the world. Many demon kings have cultivated for thousands of years, but they can only reach the true state. But if a human cultivates for thousands of years, they can become the Grand Supreme. It's because there is one more. In this world, almost everywhere is rich in spiritual power. The spiritual power is rich and peaceful, so they can use that cultivation method to cultivate wherever they go. Naturally, it will be twice the result with half the effort." Speaking of this, he stopped meaningfully. But for a moment, the demon kings didn't speak, as if they hadn't recovered from the shock just now. Or maybe it was the first time they heard such a thing and they were a little entranced. Bai Yunxin hurriedly said, "Then what does it have to do with what happened today?" Only then did Li Yunxin sigh softly, "I've said it before. The so-called heaven and earth mother plate can actually control the change of qi in the world, and change the flow of spiritual power. And now, I really can't control this thing. But, fifth brothers and a top pen can." After saying this he looked at the Tao Lord. "Tao Lord, the thing you showed everyone in the ancient relic was the Enatop pen, right? You asked the demon kings to besiege Yunshan. But in fact, even if they get the heaven and earth mother plate they can't control it completely. In the end it still belongs to you." Chapter 556. First, there was big brother and second brother who used the demons as sacrifices. Then there was fifth brother who used us to kill people and steal the treasure. Our family is really good brothers, each of us scheming. It's a pity that an honest person like me can't stand your sinister thoughts, so I don't want you to succeed. Hearing this, the demons looked at the Taoist Lord. However, the Taoist Lord spoke first. "That's right. I really have the brush. However, the demon kings present are not stupid enough to think that such a treasure can be shared. Which one of them doesn't want to fight? Do you think those weak people have to hand it over after getting it? We demons naturally do things for the strong. If someone gets the heaven and earth mother plate from Li Yunxin, feel free to ask me for the truth returning brush. If they can really take it, I have nothing to say. As long as..." He raised his eyebrows and looked at Li Yunxin sinisterly, "as long as it's not in his hands. You all know this person. He was still a human a few months ago. Now he's also a human cultivator. He speaks and acts like a human. When he was flirting with Bai Yunxin just now, didn't he also look like a human? If such a person gets this treasure, aren't you afraid that he will slaughter all the demons in the world? This thing, for the demons in the world, can be in anyone's hands but not his." Li Yunxin laughed loudly like thunder. He seemed to be chatting with Bai Yunxin just now. At this time, his aura rose again as if he was going to do something again. After laughing, his expression became serious and he stared at the Taoist Lord. "Just not in my hands? For the demons in the world? Good. Tell me, what do you want to do after getting this treasure?" The Taoist Lord was stunned and didn't answer him immediately. Li Yunxin continued to shout, "I don't think you can answer. Even if you can, it will be some bullshit about ruling the demons and leading heroes to revitalize the demon race. But ask yourself, who is willing to be ruled and led? Who doesn't want to be the master of this world?" The Tao Lord was a little annoyed and shouted, "What great move do you have this time?" Li Yunxin chuckled. "Brilliant move? You Lord Tongtian should have thought of it too. But you are blinded by your own selfishness and cannot see it. Let me tell you now, since the gold qi on the Mother Universe plate can move the qi in the world, then I'll destroy the Mother Universe plate and make the qi in the world chaotic. At that time, there will be very few places in the world where spiritual energy is soothing and peaceful. Everywhere will be full of chaotic turbulence. So what if those human cultivators have cultivation methods? The number of places where one could cultivate could be counted on one's fingers, and it would be impossible for one to achieve anything. At that time, there will be fewer and fewer cultivators in the world. Even if people get the Dharma access of cultivation, they won't be able to practice divine sense in ordinary places. They will even doubt whether this thing is useful or not and whether the path of cultivation exists. After hundreds or thousands of years, I'm afraid that even the existence of cultivators will be forgotten and treated as a joke. At that time, it will be the real rise of our demon race." When he said these words, the demons were all shocked for a moment. They could imagine that they could become the demon king of a region and obtain supreme magic treasures. But all of these were things that were done in this world. However, what Li Yunxin said now was actually going to change this world itself. How could ordinary people think of such an arrogant idea? After a while, a smarter demon king finally asked, "According to what you said, if the world is in chaos, won't it be difficult for us demons to use the spiritual power between heaven and earth?" Li Yunxin didn't look at him. He just snorted coldly. "Yes. Now that you don't have cultivation methods, do you think you can use it? If the spiritual power in the world is in chaos, we demon race will only lose shackles and oppression, but we will gain the whole world." At this time the Lord Taoist finally cried out, "Li Yunxin, you are really vicious. You can't keep this treasure, but you want others to not be able to take it?" Li Yunxin smiled coldly. "Exactly. If you and the Lord Tongtian didn't push me too hard, I really couldn't think of such a good idea in a short time. All the demons in the world should thank you. Think it through. The Mother and Earth plate is a treasure that can control the world." The Lord Taoist gritted his teeth and said, If you really dare to destroy it, Li Yunxin's face turned cold and he spat out a few words. Then you see there is nothing I don't dare to do. You like this treasure? Then watch carefully. As soon as he said this, his figure suddenly became blurred and flashed. It was as if a strong wind suddenly rose in the high sky and was about to blow him away. But how could his incarnation condensed by the chi of heaven and earth be blown away by any wind? At the same time, some changes suddenly happened in the distant Cloud Mountain. The demons on the ground were the first to notice this change. They didn't fly up into the sky so they could see the lower half of the huge Cloud Mountain. The lower half was shrouded in the night and was originally a patch of darkness. But at the same time that Li Yunxin's incarnation flashed, some light spots began to appear in the deep darkness. At first there was one, then two. Then 3, 4 dozens, hundreds of them. It was as if there were many sparks sputtering from the Cloud Mountain, and the Cloud Mountain itself also became slightly bright. It was as if there was a fire hidden under it. But the sparks seen from such a long distance couldn't be sparks. In fact, they were the external exits of the various internal passages hidden under the thick stone walls of the Cloud Mountain. There was a terrible flame and heat erupting from the inside of the Cloud Mountain. In the previous battle, many demons did have the idea of destroying the Cloud Mountain. But just like the bandits in the Jianghu who had the idea of killing their way into the throne room and becoming the emperor's head, this kind of thing could only be thought about. No one could have imagined that today at this moment, they would really see such a scene. The entire ground began to tremble. A huge amount of soil and rocks peeled off the surface of the Cloud Mountain and poured down, forming a wide, heavy and huge waterfall. The surface of the Cloud Mountain seemed to be covered by a curtain, but soon fire slowly erupted from under the curtain. After a few more breaths of time, all the demon kings would be able to hear rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth, and the enormous sound of Cloud Mountain's outer shell changing shape that seemed to be emitted by the sorrowful wails of Cloud Mountain. Did Li Yunxin really destroy the universe motherboard in Cloud Mountain? How did he do it? Seeing this scene, the Tao monarch's robe immediately fluttered, and his eyes emitted a terrifying red glow. Li Yun, Xian. But at this time the illusion of Li Yunxin had become extremely blurry. Facing the Tao monarch's rage, he could only leave a few short sentences. I understand, I understand. The illusion laughed and said, You've planned for so many years, but I destroyed it right in front of you. Won't you go mad with anger? Ha ha ha. The illusion laughed wildly as it dissipated. And the monster kings quickly recovered from the extreme shock. Because the huge Cloud Mountain in the distance also moved, it seemed that the terrible explosion had alarmed something inside, a restriction. The huge object began to rise shakily, trying to leave the ground. It was going to return to the sky 6 days in advance. And at the same time, they clearly felt that the environment around them began to undergo some indescribable changes. It was as if they had come from a pool of calm spring water in front of them. But now this pool of spring water began to shake and it began to swirl and flow in the pool. Some unpleasant things appeared and everyone in the pool began to sway, but it was not their bodies that were shaking but their souls. The souls were inextricably linked to the external chi dynamic. This meant that Li Yunxin had indeed done what he said. Since he could not control the heaven and earth mother plate, he destroyed it. The chi dynamic between heaven and earth began to change, becoming chaotic and disorderly. This change was extremely difficult for ordinary people to notice. Perhaps they would only find that some domestic animals had become restless and uneasy. But that was probably all and there would not be much impact. But for some people, cultivators, for a long time to come, this world would no longer be able to cultivate everywhere. Without rare and peaceful places with abundant spiritual power, ordinary people like Lu Laodao in the past would not be able to use any magical power. If there was such a word in this world, it should be, the end of Dharma had begun. Once Li Yunxin's illusion disappeared, Lord Taoist finally went mad. Grand and brilliant flames suddenly bloomed around him, and his whole body turned into a thin line that went straight in the direction of the Cloud Mountain, and he let out a terrible howl in the deep night. Li Yunxin, I want you dead. He destroyed the Cloud Mountain and he is coming out. Kill him for me. No. If you capture him alive, I will grant you the magical power of the Crimson Cloud Palace. He went mad, but there was another person who also went mad. It was Su Yusong who had taken over the body of the Profound Realm cultivator. He stared straight at the Cloud Mountain that was spitting flames but still staggered into the sky, and suddenly let out a cry that sounded like the cry of a ghost. Cloud Mountain. Cloud Mountain. This Lord's Cloud Mountain. This Lord's world. This Lord's... He roared at the sky, and his cry traveled hundreds of miles. "You harmed my wife, my daughter, my cloud mountain, my Daotong, and my world. Ah! I will not live under the same sky as you." This crazy Freemason wandering soul, former saint, and current profound realm Taoist also turned into a ray of light and went straight for the cloud mountain. Lord Taoist and he both seemed to have a profound realm cultivation base. Now that he had really unleashed his killing intent, the momentum was extremely shocking. Even Bai Yunxin, who was not afraid of anything, was slightly stunned. In this moment, the two of them had already flown dozens of miles away. The Demon Kings, on the other hand, were still in a daze, not knowing what to do for a moment. They had heard what Li Yunxin had said before. Although they did not really understand, they knew that it made sense. Now they saw him accomplish such a feat. He had really destroyed the nest of the Taoist priests and swordsmen. Of course they would have some, even if only a little, feelings of, "we are too inferior to catch up," in their hearts. Therefore for a moment they looked at each other, speechless. Chapter 557. Eventually someone said, "Let's go and take a look." Li Yunxin did something great. But that sage also said that there are many treasures in Cloud Mountain. There are many treasures in the Cloud Mountain. He must have brought them out. Hearing this, Bai Yunxin glared at the group of demons. "Who is talking? Come out." That demon immediately stopped talking. But his words seemed to have opened a magic box. The group of demons were so proud of themselves and wanted to get the treasures. In the end, the treasures were destroyed before they could finish their apprenticeship. Although they were not like the Taoist lord who had plotted for so many years, they were still filled with regret and unwillingness. At this moment, their emotions were stirred up by Li Yunxin's words. Although they admired Li Yunxin for doing such a good thing, but they were demons after all. So they all said, "You just want to protect your lover. Do you want to tie our hands and feet? The world is so big. It's none of your business if we go and take a look elsewhere. Let's go together." After saying that, the group of demons with high cultivation bases in the sky swarmed toward the Cloud Mountain noisily. Those on the ground with low cultivation levels also followed them to watch the show, except for the hundreds of demon kings under the evil lord's command. Very soon, thousands of demons appeared on the wasteland again. They gathered into a sea of people as if they were going to attack Cloud Mountain again. Although Bai Yunxin was shrewd, there was nothing she could do in such a situation. She couldn't possibly fight against so many fiendish demons by herself. He immediately rushed back to the ground and called out, "Lord." When she rushed up to the sky, the evil lord was still seriously injured. The demon power in his body was weak. She told Bai Yunxin that she didn't have long to live. She was not lying. Her spirit was incomplete and she didn't have a large amount of demon power to repair it. Naturally, it was hard for her to live. But when Bai Yunxin returned to her side, she realized that the evil lord was completely different from before. Her complexion looked healthy and full of energy. It was as if she had returned to her peak state in the blink of an eye. This surprised the female demon. "Lord Yu," the evil lord waved his hand lightly. Her aura and confidence returned to her. However, Bai Yunxin could still sense that there was a trace of suspicion lingering on her face. The evil lord seemed to have something heavy on his mind at the moment. She turned around on the hill she was standing on and said to the demon kings, "Since something has happened at Cloud Mountain, you guys should follow and take a look. However, you are not allowed to participate in it. You can only watch from the side." The demons hesitated and did not accept the order immediately. Previously, when the evil lord killed the skeletons, his aura was terrifying. But then Dragon the Fifth came and talked nonsense, and there were 3 Dragon Sun fighting in the sky, but she didn't make a move. These scenes made some demons suspicious. Forefather Tua Tua, who had attained the Tao on the wooden bench, smiled and said, "Does Lord really want us to do this? We are even more worried that Jun Shang was injured in the previous battle. Now that the situation is dangerous, once we go, who will protect Jun Shang?" After saying this, the demons fell silent and stared at the evil lord in the dark. If it were a Taoist priest or a swordsman, they would have shivered at the sight of this. Just a moment ago, these demons and devils were fighting with the skeletons right under the evil lord's nose as if they were loyal and devoted soldiers. However, now, once they suspected that the evil lord was injured, they would look at her like this. They were like a pack of hungry wolves staring at a delicious prey. However, the evil lord did not seem to be surprised. This kind of scene was normal for demons. Although they had achieved success in their cultivation, learned human language and wore human clothes, they were still in between human and beast. They had the intelligence of humans but not the rationality of humans. Therefore, the part of them that was called animal nature became more cunning and dangerous. Even if the person who was high and mighty became weak, they would want to tear him apart and swallow him to gain some benefits. This was also the reason why Qingjun and Hatred stayed in the mountains alone after they were seriously injured by the skeleton instead of gathering their remaining subordinates. It was because it would be more dangerous. Things were not the same as before. Now, some vague but real rules had been broken. The demons did not have to hide anymore and Long Sun could be killed. For humans it was the end of the world, but for demons, it was the beginning of a new life. The Fiend Lord smiled. There was a hint of coldness in his smile. "Do you want to make trouble?" She said this straightforwardly. She raised her hand and pointed at the demons. A beam of golden light shot out from her fingertip and pierced between Patriarch Tuatuo's eyebrows. "Do you think there is no limit to my tolerance for you?" The golden light flashed and disappeared. It was so short that it looked like an illusion. However, when the demons looked at where Patriarch Tuatua was standing, they all kept quiet out of fear. After a moment or two of silence, they all shouted, "You are right. You are right. It is time to go. Let's go." Not long after, they all left. There was only a square-headed elm stool in the room. No one paid attention to the stool. When the demons left, the evil lord took a step into the void. Then she flew into the sky and flew away. Her steps were calm but her speed was fast. It was as if she was not the one walking but the ground was moving backward. Bai Yunxin was also enveloped by her escape art. She knew that the evil lord had fully recovered his power. If the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate that Old Five mentioned is true, it is indeed very powerful. The evil lord said in a low voice as he walked, "My demon power has been depleted. But just now, Li Yunxin controlled the earth chi to replenish my power. It is hard to imagine." He sighed. "Since he has such an incredible skill, I think Zijuan will not have a good ending. I'm afraid she has been subdued by him." Bai Yunxin said worriedly, "My lord, the evil lord waved his hand, I don't care about him and Zijuan anymore. I'm not one of those idiots. I know a little. Although I was injured because of him, it was also very courageous of him to dare to save me. But such a treasure. I didn't expect him to destroy it. I also didn't expect him to kill Lord Tongtian. Sigh, I didn't expect." She ran away quickly. In the time it took for her to sigh, she had already reached the plains at the foot of the mountain. She was already dozens of miles away from the cliff. He stopped in his tracks and glanced at the ground. The ground was full of corpses, blood and broken armors. Bai Yunxin frowned when she saw the scene, but the evil lord looked at it carefully. After a while, she waved her hand. An object jumped up from the ground and landed in her hand. Bai Yunxin looked at it and realized that it was very familiar. She thought again and realized that it should have belonged to Li Yunxin. It was a white folding fan made of bamboo. The evil lord frowned slightly. He shook his hand and the folding fan opened. The white fan was full of red dots. If one didn't look carefully, they would think that it was a red cloud. "I didn't expect him to hand over the summer palace to me." She looked at it for a long time but couldn't find anything strange. She only knew that the paper used for the fan was ordinary Dharma paper. However, the red dots on it hid something else. Maybe it was a unique mystery of the art of painting. She didn't waste any more effort and put the folding fan into her sleeve. After a moment of silence, she looked at her daughter and asked, "Exen, do you really like him?" The evil lord could tell that if his daughter liked Li Yunxin 30% in the past, it had become 70% now. Whether it was a mortal or a demon, which girl didn't like their sweetheart's majestic and energetic look? What Li Yunxin had done just now could no longer be described with the words awe-inspiring. Bai Yunxin was stunned. She stared at the evil lord's sleeve worriedly. The evil lord sighed, "I know your feelings. When you were in the sky, before Li Yunxin destroyed the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate, you injected your demonic power into my body. Then, you told me that the demons would go to Cloud Mountain and asked me to come here to get his folding fan. In fact, this is his summer palace. The magic weapon he used to tie up the second brother and the second brother's dragon soul are all in here." When the evil lord said this, he turned to look at the direction of Cloud Mountain. The explosion inside Cloud Mountain seemed to be still going on. However, it was also rising up stubbornly and shakily. She didn't know how terrible the situation inside was. She could only see that there were streams of fire flowing out from all the exits and hanging in midair. This made the whole Cloud Mountain look like a giant jellyfish. The top half was a solemn, dark and solid body. The bottom half was made of many shining tentacles made of flames that kept growing longer. From such a distance, it seemed to be rising very slowly. However, its speed should be extremely fast. In just a short time it was already 2 miles above the ground. However, because its body was too big, it looked like it was still sticking to the ground. She retracted her gaze and looked at Bai Yunxin. I underestimated him. I didn't expect him to be so reckless and bold. Such a person. Xianair is extremely dangerous. Although his cultivation level is low now, after what happened today, I can't help but feel afraid if I have to be his enemy. Must think it through. Bai Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. However, she only raised her eyebrows. My lord, is he that scary? He just destroyed a treasure. If he can't get it, no one else can. This is his style. I know it. The evil lord let out a sigh. It was late autumn night. Her breath turned into white fog. The weather was getting colder. Her face was slightly blurred because of the fog. I'm not afraid of this. I'm afraid of his ruthlessness. Demons and cannibals are ruthless when they kill people. He doesn't eat people or kill people randomly. But today, I know, his heart is the most ruthless. The evil lord's expression was solemn. He used to be a human. He has only been a demon for a few months. But what he did today, he cut off the fate of the cultivation of the human Tao. The viciousness of this matter can't be described with words. Zither Lady and Lord Tong Tian sent many demons to their deaths in order to make the demons in the world obedient to them so that they could dominate the world. When did they ever think of cutting off the path of survival for the demon race? But Li Yunxin did. Not only did he do it, but he also did it. Not only did he do it, he didn't feel guilty at all. Once such a person becomes hostile, I'm afraid no one is more terrifying than him in the world. Bai Yunxin listened to what she said and thought for a while with a frown. But she still blinked her eyes. Is this considered terrifying? The evil lord sighed in her heart again. Her daughter had traveled the world and thought that she had seen a lot of things. But there were some things that she couldn't see just by walking around the human world. She had to be lucky, be in the torrent of history or at a turning point to see it. She didn't have that kind of experience. Naturally, she didn't realize that the current Li Yunxin, how terrifying he was. But how could she not have a trace of luck in her heart? At this moment, the safest way was to kill him. However, the evil lord dismissed the thought as soon as it appeared in his mind. Based on Li Yunxin's methods just now, this person did things step by step and was extremely scheming. Since he saved her life, it meant that he had full confidence that she wouldn't harm him. But the evil lord didn't think of this confidence, so she couldn't figure it out. But at least she knew that Li Yunxin wasn't the kind of person who would trust anyone easily. Now that he asked her to come and get this folding fan, although he said that it was his temporary imperial residence and that he was afraid that someone would take it away and asked her to keep it, she was sure that it wasn't real. Maybe it was one of his tests. It was always the evil lord who tested others. But now it was this guy who did it. But she didn't feel insulted or offended. Not to mention the realm, Li Yunxin had the ability to do so. So she said, fine. You have to grow up, now go over there and take a look. After saying that, the mother and daughter waved their sleeves and went in the direction of Cloud Mountain. But at this moment, near Cloud Mountain, it had become a sea of fire. The fire that fell from Cloud Mountain finally fell to the ground, even burning the soil and rocks. The fire was extremely high, at least 100 feet high. It was like a primitive forest made of fire, emitting shocking heat. Originally, the demons were shocked by Li Yunxin's methods. Only the Lord Taoist and Su Yusong were looking for Li Yunxin everywhere to seek revenge. But after they rushed here and cursed, Li Yunxin didn't show up. It seemed that he was afraid. So many demons who were hesitant and planned to wait and see also became bold. For the supernatural Taoist skills promised by the Lord Taoist and the mysterious treasures mentioned by Su Yusong, they also began to search for traces of Li Yunxin. Just like that, above the vast sea of fire, it was as bright as day. And more than a dozen profound realm demons, more than 100 true realm demons, and even more demons whose cultivation level was above the transcendent realm, cast a dragnet, determined to find Li Yunxin. But now the qi between heaven and earth was already chaotic. There were many supernatural powers that could be used easily in the past, but now it became very difficult. Maybe in the future, when they gradually became familiar with such an environment, they would be able to use it easily again. But at least at this time, it was extremely difficult for the demons to lock onto another person through the changes in qi like before. Therefore, these supernatural beings were now like mortals, looking and searching with their eyes could be said to be extremely difficult. The Lord Taoist was already extremely angry after searching for 15 minutes but still couldn't find him. He jumped on the sea of fire, completely losing the bearing of a master, and shouted loudly, Li Yunxin! You cowardly rat! You can escape today, but can you escape forever? Previously, you were pretending in front of the heroes of the world, but now you're hiding. This is all you can do. I'm afraid that in the future, you will not be tolerated by humans, nor will you be tolerated by demons. I know that you're used to living in hiding in the past. I'm afraid that you still don't know what it means to obey the will of heaven and win the hearts of people, and you don't know how to save your life in this chaotic world. However, a voice suddenly interrupted him. Chapter 558. It should be Li Yunxin's voice, but it sounded indistinct. No one knew where it came from. As soon as the voice came out, the demons who were searching for him fell silent. They wanted to know where the true body was. The Taoist lord was stunned at first, but then he grinned. Good. If you dare to show yourself, but he seemed to have run into some kind of evil star today. Before he could finish his sentence, it was snatched away by someone else. Su Yusong, who had gone mad, flew around the sea of fire like a headless fly, shouting, "Come out, I'm going to kill you. You will die in my hands today." The Taoist lord looked at him coldly and shouted, "This kid and I have a deep grudge. I won't be satisfied if I don't kill him with my own hands, but he has caused such a disaster. Humph, since you used to be the Cloud Mountain Saint, I will allow you to kill this bastard with me today, but none of you are allowed to do anything." He raised his hand and pointed at the demon kings in the field, saying sternly, "This battle is a personal grudge. I will make this kid Li Yunxin accept his death. After he dies, you can take all his treasures, but if anyone dares to cause trouble, we will attack them together." As soon as he said this, he heard Li Yunxin laugh again. At this time, the demons could vaguely tell that the voice seemed to be coming from the ground. "Ha, good. Accept your personal grudge. If your *T were said by the people of Jianghu in the secular world, it would be, let's not talk about Jianghu morality with this unorthodox demon, let's fight together. I see that you like to talk ostentatiously and look pompous. You think you are also an impetuous fool. But you do know to find yourself a mysterious realm helper first in case you fail in my hands. Then you said some *T to tell them not to attack, but in fact you asked them to stop others from helping me. Ah. A genuine hypocrite like you is also an anomaly among the demons. Interesting. The Taoist lord was not angry. He only smiled coldly. As he spoke, he carefully lowered his head to look for Li Yunxin's figure. "Don't try to talk big. You're just at the peak of the true state and you dare to talk big. It would be great if you were an ordinary demon. With such a majestic demonic power, I'm afraid you would have advanced into a profound realm. But I do know that you also cultivate some painting technique. If you suddenly reach such a profound state, I'm afraid you don't have to cultivate the painting Tao anymore, and all sorts of tribulations will come. Besides." At this point, he suddenly lowered his voice as if he did not want the other demons to hear him. "Previously, I had a way to tell that the evil lord was severely injured. Now, I naturally have a way to know. Not long ago, you actually infused most of the demonic power from the demon souls on the battlefield into her body to heal her. Although I don't know what's going on between the two of you, I can make some guesses about your current realm. If you want to call her to save you, you're just wasting your time. Within 10 breaths, I'll destroy your soul." When he said the last few words, his voice gradually became louder. After saying all this, the surrounding demon kings should have applauded, made his aura even stronger, and made Li Yunxin even more terrified. But soon he realized that the surroundings were strangely quiet. It was as if the demon kings had seen something extraordinary, and so they were speechless for a long time. The Taoist lord's heart tightened, and his gaze drifted around. He saw that the demon kings were all staring behind him. Thus, he suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart. He turned around and splashed out a stream of flame, shouting, "What a thief! How dare you sneak attack me!" His reaction was extremely fast and his technique was also very clever. At such a chaotic moment, he could use such a powerful supernatural power in the blink of an eye, sealing off every possible angle of attack from the sneak attacker. It was enough to show his ability. But this attack missed. When Su Yusong, who was extremely far away, heard the noise and rushed over, the Taoist lord finally turned around and saw what was behind him. Actually, no one sneak attacked him. Li Yunxin was standing on the ground. If not for the aura on his body and hatred's description of his appearance, it would be difficult for the Taoist lord to connect him to the peak of the true state Dragon Sun, who was hiding everywhere in a sorry state. Because he was far too impressive and pompous. He wore a 9 swallowing 8 golden leaves dragon scale armor, and each armor leaf emitted a blurry golden light. This made his body look like it was shrouded in a ball of golden mist. He wore a flaming lion purple gold crown on his head. The mighty divine beast's eyes were inlaid with some kind of rubies that were infused with dense spiritual energy. It was not angry, but it was powerful. Ordinary people, cultivators with lower cultivation bases, and fiendish demons would be frightened and their minds would be in a trance when this ferocious beast's gaze swept past them. It was obvious that it was a treasure that could confuse people. He wore a pair of six-petal, six-edged beast claw boots. The tips of the boots shone with a cold light, and there were light blades that were flickering, as if they were about to shoot out an unparalleled spiritual energy aura. There was a 6-foot golden goose feather saber on his waist. There was no sheath on the saber. There were no decorations on the blade. However, he felt a sharp pain in his eyes when he looked at it. It was as if the extremely sharp and powerful aura on the saber was about to slash his body from hundreds of feet away. However, under this was a tight white robe. This made him look mighty and majestic, but it did not reduce his handsome and elegant aura. The two styles were strangely unified. It was likely that there wouldn't be such a beautiful and mighty general in the world. Li Yunxin was now standing on the ground. The flames within 100 feet of him were forced back and surrounded him. However, the flames and heat made him look even more imposing. In fact, what the Demon King saw just now was, the terrifying ninth dragon sun slowly parted the sea of fire and appeared on the ground while the Taoist Lord and Su Yusong were still running around like headless flies. Then he observed the Taoist Lord coldly. It was only when he thought that he had been ambushed and casually attacked in panic that he sneered. "There's no need for a sneak attack to deal with someone like you." His calm aura, which was like a mountain, made the Taoist Lord panic even more when he attacked just now. However, it was not his aura that caused the Monster Kings to hold their breaths when he appeared. It was, as soon as he appeared, he released his pressure and aura in an extremely ostentatious manner. Those with low cultivation might not be able to see it, but how could these Demon Kings not know that the one who had such an aura was not the peak of the true state as the Taoist Lord had said, but at least, the mysterious realm of Shi? The reason why the Demon Kings still dared to come now was because they all knew that Longjio was only in the true state. If it was by chance, he would at most reach the peak of the true state. One had to know that the cultivation method was different from the demons. If the foundation was not stable and the advancement was too fast, there would be trouble. Going from the true state to the profound state was a difficult threshold. Didn't the Taoist Lord see so many Taoist sect cultivators talking about Taoist heart, tribulation transcendence and so on? Who knew that Longjio's advancement was so terrifying, and now he had become a super big demon in the profound state? Did he no longer cultivate that cultivation method, and didn't care about emotionless or tribulation transcendence? There were only a dozen or so people in the profound state among the group of demons. Encountering this demon of the demons, who was also in the profound state, and also had Taoist spells and supernatural powers, who would be tired of living and want to pounce on him. The Taoist Lord had said something like, "Don't make a move, and have a fair fight." Seeing the current Li Yunxin, the demons were afraid that even if the Taoist Lord forced them to make a move, they wouldn't be willing to. The Taoist Lord was stunned when he saw him and suddenly raised his eyebrows. "You?" He had a lot of doubts in his heart. He wanted to take a closer look at him to find any abnormalities or flaws. But at this time, this Li Yunxin didn't say anything more. He paused on the ground and a flame lotus appeared under his feet, lifting him up into the air. Then he patted his waist, pulled out the goose feather saber that shone with cold light and shouted, "Since you want to see me so much, let's see what you're made of." As soon as he said this, there was only a ball of golden light where he stood. All the flames within a radius of dozens of feet had turned into green ghost fire, as if a world independent of this world had been formed. The goose feather saber in his hand burst out with hundreds of millions of saber lights, and in an instant the green ghost fire was completely suppressed. It was unknown whether it was thousands or tens of thousands of sounds of metal colliding. The Taoist Lord and Su Yusong were trapped in it at the same time, and in the blink of an eye, they had suffered countless abnormally fierce slashes. The momentum of this attack was so great that all the Demon Kings gasped. The people in the profound sect were used to seeing gorgeous Taoist spells, but the Demon Kings hadn't seen many. Not to mention what Li Yunxin used, the demon power was extremely strong, fierce and brave, as if it had reached the peak of the Shi profound state. The supernatural power was extremely exquisite, and the changes contained in it were not something that the supernatural power of demons could evolve. It had to be mixed with the profound sect's Taoist spells and swordsmanship, so that the Taoist Lord and Su Yusong couldn't break it for a while, and suffered thousands of slashes. This was using the profound sect's supernatural power. He used this kind of means that was regarded as a life-saving skill by these Demon Kings. This Longjio was really scary. However, the Taoist Lord was also a dragon's, a great demon of the Shi profound state. The strength of his body was probably even greater than that of Li Yunxin. Although Su Yusong was a human cultivator, he used to be a saint of the profound sect. Even if he had less experience than the original, he could control the body of a profound realm Taoist with the cultivation of half a saint, and he didn't fall into a disadvantage for a while. These two took the first blow from Li Yunxin, but they were not seriously injured. After a storm of blows, the Taoist Lord rushed out first, wrapped in a thick ball of fire. The moment he rushed out, the ghostly green space was broken. Light and fire returned to the world, and Su Yusong jumped out of the fire like a drowning man coming to the surface of the water, but he looked up to the sky and laughed, "Ha ha! Just so. Li Yunxin, you little boy stole my treasure, but you don't know the spell and you can't use the power of this treasure. What's the difference between grabbing a butcher's knife and slashing randomly? Now you see my real Taoist magic." He hated Li Yunxin more than the Taoist Lord, and his mind was crazy. So now he didn't know what fear was. He dared to pounce on Li Yunxin with his bare hands, wearing only a shabby Taoist robe. Lightning flashed between his palms, and in a moment, a terrible electric snake was drawn from the thick clouds in the sky, and it went straight to Li Yunxin. "Come and have a taste of my thunder magic. Let's see if I can kill you dragons." Su Yusong attacked fiercely, but the Taoist Lord didn't stop him. He could see that although Li Yunxin was in the mysterious realm of Shi, the first level of the mysterious realm, he hadn't consolidated his realm yet, and many of his techniques were clumsy. Once he entered the mysterious realm, his divine abilities were mostly related to the rules of heaven and earth, and the origin of the great Tao. Demon power could be increased, but these things that required time and experience couldn't be rushed. At this moment, Su Yusong was in front, and he used 5-9 heavens thunder fire from the back, mixing into Su Yusong's thunder magic. In the end, this former saint was a madman. He might as well let him take the lead and probe Li Yunxin's real situation. But Li Yunxin seemed to be relying on his divine armor, and was afraid of losing his momentum in front of the demons, causing them to attack him, so he laughed wildly, "Come on then, take this move of mine too." Seeing the terrible electric snake coming down from the sky, the demons were so frightened that they retreated dozens of feet, but Li Yunxin's body shook, and he slashed with his blade again. He only slashed once, but in an instant the blade light slashed out thousands of times. The wild thunder and the blade energy burst out at the same time, and the golden figure of the ninth dragon sun was instantly engulfed in the dazzling electric light, but the blade energy he forced out also hit Su Yusong's body. A series of earth-shattering explosions rang out as the three figures crossed paths with each other. When the light dissipated, Li Yunxin was still standing with his head held high, his chest out, and his momentum was like a rainbow. But the goose feather blade in his hand had become sawtooth, and it seemed to be slightly damaged. The light of the brilliant golden armor on his body was also slightly dimmed, and there were even 2 burn marks on his shoulder, with faint green smoke rising. It was unknown whether it was Su Yusong's thunder magic that made the difference, or the Taoist Lord's 9 heavens thunder fire that made a miraculous effect. But Su Yusong's appearance was worse. His body was not as strong as the Taoist Lord and Li Yunxin. Just now he had taken all of Dragon Sun's blade energy, and now his body was covered with finger-wide wounds. He looked like a sack riddled with holes. But he was a wandering soul and he actually could not hold on. He laughed even more crazily, stupid thing, the golden goose feather blade and the 9 refined dragon scale armor. Although they are not the best treasures among the treasures of Cloud Mountain, if they know the incantation, I'm afraid they will kill me in one move. Haha, did you bring them out because they are beautiful? They look good but they are useless. How long can you hold on? As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly faded, and his voice also became blurred. I will teach you some mysterious realm magical powers. This time the Taoist Lord did not follow and Fan took a step back. Among the crowd of demons, the mysterious realm demon king's expression also became serious, and he even flew dozens of feet away. Because these demons with profound cultivation knew that Su Yusong was now using an extremely terrifying ability. Stepping into the mysterious realm, one could use the rules of heaven and earth to fight against enemies. But it was already very difficult to touch the rules of heaven and earth, let alone use them. Those who cultivated to this realm mostly used this method as a trump card, and would not use it unless it was a critical moment, if they were lucky enough to comprehend it. The method that Su Yusong was using now was of this type. Chapter 559. As soon as the wandering soul finished speaking, with his figure as the center, the area within a radius of tens of feet suddenly became bright and then dim. The flames that used to burn on the ground had now become pitch black. They themselves had no shape or color, the only reason they could still be seen was because of the surrounding scenery. The space that used to be above the flames was now shining brightly. It wasn't that there was something glowing inside, but that space itself was glowing. Not only was it glowing, but it also seemed to have become some kind of matter. The space started to flow. It was divided into countless palm-sized fragments and started to flow. Like a ball of fine ice crystals wrapped together, slowly rolling. Su Yusong's body was broken into pieces by these fragments of space, scattered around as if he had been scattered by someone. But in fact, these fragments still maintained the previous connection through some kind of rule that obviously did not belong to this world. This made him still able to speak. Li Yunxin, do you know what the mysterious realm is? It is a body that resides between heaven and earth, and acts according to the rules of the great Tao. Now have a taste of my attack. At this time, Li Yunxin's body was also cut into many fragments by the space. His face could not be seen clearly. But obviously he wanted to put his body back together. But in fact he felt that his body was still complete and independent, and he could feel the existence of his limbs and the surging demon power in his body. But he could see the various parts of his body getting further and further apart. Finally, these fragments of space under Su Yusong's control flowed in a specific trajectory, so that every part of Li Yunxin's body was in front of him. The wandering soul who controlled the mysterious realm body shouted, "Ah! You're going to die today." Hearing this, only then did they realize that maybe he had not fully understood this magical method and forced himself to use it. Or maybe his new body and soul could not cooperate perfectly for a while, so his strength was not enough. At this time he was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could not maintain this space. Many demons who had not reached the mysterious realm saw this method for the first time, and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Among those who had reached the mysterious realm, only 2 or 3 knew this kind of magical ability. Most of them either had just touched the threshold of this magical ability, or were still studying it. Now that he saw the scene in front of him, he was even more focused. It was as if they had forgotten that this was a battle of life and death, but a spar. It was a very short but also seemed to be a very long moment. The bright and dark space suddenly turned completely black. It was as if the dark flames had finally sucked away the last of the light inside. There was no longer any light that could reach the outside world. Naturally, there was nothing for the demons to see. An extremely terrifying and strange aura spread through the entire area, but this aura was inexplicably familiar to every demon. But among them they were either slow-witted or inexperienced. If there was someone who was good at both, such as Li Yunxin who saw this scene, they might think of demonic seed. After another 3 breaths of time, the darkness suddenly dispersed. The light quickly squeezed in and expanded. All the demons saw what happened. It was a battle that was carried out using such a strange method. There wasn't any dazzling light or sound when it was going on. Now that it was over, the scene that they saw could be said to be lackluster. The 2 of them were still standing in the void. The saber in Li Yunxin's hand was still the saber, and the armor was still the armor. And Su Yusong's appearance was still full of holes, but his face was trembling very quickly as if it was the night wind that made his face tremble. But in fact, it was indeed the night wind that made his face tremble. After 2 breaths of time, his body suddenly deflated. The overflowing spiritual power escaped from every wound, and his body and face were quickly distorted. But the airflow caused by this also brought out his last few words. I'm not reconciled. You should know that this Li Yunxin, is just relying on his armor. I've already broken it. Finally, Su Yusong's voice turned into a pure exhalation. As if the last breath of a playful child was squeezed out of a skin bag, a thin and tattered layer of human skin fluttered to the ground. There was nothing inside. No one knew whether it was because his Shenqi was not finished or because it was broken by Li Yunxin. This peak profound realm cultivator actually died just like that. Even his soul was gone. All the demons were silent for a moment, and all eyes were focused on Li Yunxin. But before they were too shocked to check. Now that they looked carefully, they felt that his breath had become weak and disordered. It was as if a bunch of messy things had been stuffed into his meridians, making it impossible for him to circulate them smoothly no matter how hard he tried. Su Yusong's attack just now had indeed seriously injured him. A temporarily borrowed Profound Realm body was able to hurt Profound Realm Dragon's son, who was wearing a full body of precious armor, to such a state with his bare hands. Could be considered shocking. Seeing Li Yunxin like this, the Lord Taoist laughed. Wonderful. It's rare to see such a person who can be seen as an enemy by both the demons and the profound sect. This old thing looks crazy, but he's actually quite useful. Ninth brother, oh ninth brother. Your divine weapon is sharp and your precious armor is strong, but if I break them, what else can you rely on? Eat my ninth heaven thunder fire. Although he said it lightly, his attacks were fast and ruthless. The guy who called himself the Cloud Mountain Sage used the magical power of the rules of heaven and earth, but still failed to kill Li Yunxin, who had just entered the Shi profound realm. Instead, he was defeated and died. It could be seen that he did have some capital to be arrogant. If he was an ordinary dragon's son or a demon, maybe he could really escape, but hit. Following the Lord Taoist's angry shout, the rolling thunder from the sky split into countless branches above Li Yunxin's head, trapping him like a huge tree cage. Li Yunxin's movements were a little slow now. He was about to break out of the encirclement, but the Lord Taoist made a series of hand seals and shouted loudly, "Have a taste of the supreme great Tao that I've comprehended after guarding the Crimson Firmament Palace for 2,000 years. As soon as he made a hand seal, his fingertips immediately emitted a brilliant light. This appearance and momentum were actually somewhat similar to the magical powers used by the high-level cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo. But what surprised the demons even more was that it was not just similar. Tribulation wind and thunder, poisonous fire and thunderbolts, bone-corroding nether air, and some other techniques that they couldn't name but could tell were all contained in this light. Among the demons, a few had fought with the skeleton before. Therefore, they could tell at a glance, wasn't this clearly the skeleton's technique? It knew all the Daotong and Kenzo spells and it used them all at once. This terrible power passed through the electric cage formed by the ninth heaven thunder fire and hit Li Yunxin's body. The mystic light and the lightning intersected, and the ninth dragon son, who had been slowed down by Su Yusong's fierce attack, was completely taken advantage of. Golden blood splattered everywhere. The demons only knew that the Lord Taoist of the Crimson Firmament Palace had been comprehending some great Tao that demons could cultivate. Only now, when they saw him use it with their own eyes, did they realize that he seemed to have really comprehended it. Compared to those demons who only fought with brute force and always fought with their flesh and blood, his technique was so brilliant that it was terrifying. If a person had the strong body of a demon, could easily obtain demonic power, and had the magical powers cultivated by the Taoist, where in the world couldn't he go? Wasn't this the reason why Li Yunxin, who was fighting with the Lord Taoist now, could be so powerful? The demons were so shocked, but when they looked at Li Yunxin again, they saw that he was already above the sea of fire. He had been blasted hundreds of feet away by the Lord Taoist's all-out attack just now before he stopped. The goose feather saber in his hand, which had previously made the demons extremely envious, was now densely covered in cracks like a spider's web. Although the shape of the saber was still there, it must have been seriously injured. If there was a skilled craftsman who carefully refined it over time, it might be able to regain its former glory. But now, it was probably going to be destroyed together with Li Yunxin. The bright purple gold armor on his body had also dimmed. There was a large crack on the left side of his chest, and there were also small cracks on his waist. There was a faint dark gold flash in the cracks. It should be his dragon blood. The treasures left behind by the saints of the Taoist sect were nothing else. They were treasures created by experts of the Grand Supreme Realm with the experience gained from many years of cultivation and the precious materials collected by countless disciples from all over the world. To these existences of the profound realm, even if there were no incantations and they could not unleash its full power, it was still a terrifyingly powerful treasure. However, the Lord Taoist's attack had almost destroyed the treasures left behind by the saints on Li Yunxin's body. It could be seen how powerful it was. If Li Yunxin did not have these treasures to protect himself, he would probably have lost half his life. The Lord Taoist was obviously very satisfied with the outcome of the battle. The all-out attack just now seemed to have consumed a lot of his primordial energy. Therefore he did not pursue the victory. Instead, he quietly adjusted his breathing for a while and looked at Li Yunxin with a calm attitude as if victory was in his grasp. Your reliance has now been destroyed by the great Tao that I have comprehended. Next, it's time for you to use your true strength to end this fair and square with me. After saying that, he took a deep breath and took a step forward in the void. Because of this step, the sleeves of his robe fluttered even though there was no wind, looking intimidating. With his remaining strength, it was enough to kill Li Yunxin, who had been completely destroyed. And now he wanted to make this final all-out attack even more beautiful. Today 2 dragon sons would die. This was a big day worth remembering. However, Li Yunxin coughed and spat out a mouthful of golden blood. He waved his hand. "Wait a moment." He said this casually. It was as if the two of them were sparring. However, the painful and weak expression and the extremely chaotic aura were not fake. Perhaps this madman also knew that he had come to the end, so he wanted to fight a more beautiful battle. The Lord Taoist hated those who were arrogant, but he could do nothing about them. However, for someone who was already in the palm of his hand and could be killed at any time, he was patient. He sneered. "What? What else do you have to say?" Chapter 560. Li Yunxin didn't say anything. Instead, he turned his head and looked at the group of demons. He saw a few demon kings in the true realm staring at the goose feather saber in his hand. These demon monarchs all had slender limbs and thin physiques. Although he didn't know what it was, this treasure saber must be very suitable for them. His current plan was to wait for Li Yunxin's death and see if he could snatch a few fragments. If he refined it into a short weapon, it would be a treasure that could dominate the world. He smiled weakly and said in a low voice, "Do you want it?" Li Yunxin seemed to be at the end of his rope. However, the scenes of him killing Hatred, destroying the Cloud Mountain, defeating the former sage, and resisting the 3 fierce attacks of the Lord Taoist were still in front of the demons. Now that he suddenly spoke, they couldn't resist and nodded subconsciously. Yes. However, as soon as they said this, they realized that something was wrong. Then they saw Li Yunxin raise his hand. He threw the saber over as if it was trash. "Take it if you want." The demon kings were dumbfounded. When the treasure, which was damaged but still shining, fell down, they suddenly came to their senses and rushed over to grab it. They scrambled to snatch it. Li Yunxin ignored them. Laughing out loud, he reached his hand over his head and took off the lion crown that was missing an eye. His black hair fluttered wildly in the night wind. "Who wants this?" He suddenly did this. The Lord Taoist was stunned. The demons were also stunned. They didn't answer for a moment. Li Yunxin snorted coldly. "If no one wants it, I'll throw it away." After saying this, he really threw the treasure into the sea of fire. The demons finally came to their senses. Immediately, dozens of them chased after it. The Lord Taoist narrowed his eyes and sneered. "Oh, that's good. Divide the treasure before you die. It's not a waste. But if you want to escape because of this chaos, you're dreaming." After saying this, he frowned and shouted at the demons, "Go ahead and snatch it. But if you let him take advantage of the chaos to escape, Ben Jun will not forgive you. After killing this fiend, I also have treasures on me. I'll bestow them all to you." In the end, he was still a meticulous person. He was afraid that the demons would be tricked by Li Yunxin and cause chaos, so he didn't hesitate to immediately give them precious treasures to reassure them. However, Li Yunxin did not seem to care about his words. After throwing away the lion crown, he reached out and tore at his chest. The purple gold armor on his body was torn into 2 along the crack. Countless demon kings who coveted his treasure sucked in cold breaths of air and heartache. He held the broken armor in his hand and tossed it over without any hesitation. "Take it." Immediately, another group of demon kings swarmed forward like hyenas, snatching each other's food. Standing above the raging sea of fire, he looked a little like a wandering lion. A group of hyenas that were afraid of his power and did not dare to move forward, but because of their greed, they stared at him with drooling eyes, waiting for him to leave behind some relics before he died. In less than 10 breaths, all the treasures on his body were scattered. Now he only wore a white robe and stood in the air with a head full of black hair. The Taoist lord sneered. "Now that you have nothing to worry about, there's nothing to scatter, right?" However, Li Yunxin stared at him again. After 2 breaths of silence, he said again, "Wait a moment." Then, without a change in expression, he fiercely pierced his own chest with his fingertips, which were now covered in sharp armor. Although they gradually knew that Li Yunxin often did unexpected things, his action still shocked the demons. But his action still shocked the demons. Was he planning to kill himself? They saw that the 9th dragon's son not only stabbed his fingers into his chest, but even half of his forearm had entered his chest. The demons were all ferocious. If they cried out in pain when they were injured or disabled, they would be laughed at. But there weren't many who could be like Li Yunxin. She could stab her arm into her own chest and still stare calmly at the Taoist monarch without changing her expression. This calmness made the Taoist lord feel a little uneasy. He frowned and shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Li Yunxin smiled. As if he had grabbed something in his chest, he slowly pulled his hand out. In the process of pulling it out, it seemed that something was stuck in his bones, so the progress was very slow. Fifth brother wants a fair victory in front of all the demons in the world, right? Then what's the hurry, that old thing? At this point he finally frowned and sucked in a breath as if he was spasming. A sharp-eyed demon king saw something protruding from the left side of his chest. It was as if he had accidentally touched his heart and pierced it when he was trying to pull it out. But he was Dragon Son after all, and he was in the profound realm. The toughness of his body had reached an unimaginable level. Even the wound that pierced through his heart only made him frown a little. Then he continued, that old thing scattered his body. He scattered mine again, hiss, mixed in, humph. At this point he seemed to have finally pulled something out. This stupid, smelly and dirty body is not fit to mix with me. If the demons didn't understand what he meant when he said this before, then wait, after he pulled the thing out of his chest he was shocked to find out. It seemed to be a pile of bones and organs. However, the surface was full of Li Yunxin's golden dragon blood, so it was severely corroded, and now it was sizzling and emitting white smoke. Hearing his words, he thought of the saint of the mysterious sect who was only left with a light body before he died, as well as the messy and unsmooth aura that he had sensed. It turned out that what he pulled out from his body were the bones and organs of the Taoist priest. That madman used the magical power of the profound realm to shatter his body and Dragon Son's body. Then it seemed that he couldn't support himself, so he used himself as a terrible weapon, and inserted his bones and organs into Dragon Son's body. Naturally, this was the result of slow movement, messy meridians and mixed aura. Damn it, disgusting and vicious. Li Yunxin turned to look at the demons. Who wants this thing? But the surroundings were speechless. Even if he died today, the things that he had done and the kind of bearing that he had displayed was enough to make many demon kings talk about him for a while. No one answered. He flipped his hand and threw the pile of trash into the fire. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. It's peaceful now. It was indeed peaceful. At this moment his aura was smooth again, even though it was a little weak. His weakness was the weakness of Dragon Son, who was in the profound realm of Shi. Dragons were demons among demons, and their bodies were extremely strong. In his current state, he wouldn't be defeated by any of the great demon kings on the battlefield. However, he was facing the Taoist Lord. It was unknown what kind of treasures the Taoist Lord had on him, but the treasured armor and divine weapons he had worn before were shattered by the two profound realm experts, Su Yusong and the Taoist Lord. He had divine abilities, but the Taoist Lord he saw now also had them. Moreover, the Taoist Lord had been in the profound realm of Shi for many years. Whether it was understanding, experience, or the use of power, they were all far above him. Now it seemed that he was definitely going to lose. Therefore, the Taoist Lord stared at him for a while and shook his head. You're an interesting person. I thought you had some conspiracy. It turns out that you really just want to die quietly. If you weren't too stupid and arrogant before. He stared at Li Yunxin seriously, and the demon power around him surged. I'd like to keep you alive for fun. The demons were all silent. The raging fire set the prairie ablaze. The two profound realm dragon sons were facing each other in midair, and a battle was about to break out. There was no suspense, and one of them would definitely die. At this moment, two powerful female demons also arrived, but they didn't make a move, nor did they step forward. They only stood quietly in the shadow of a hill not far away. There seemed to be another person in the shadow, watching and listening to the scene above the sea of fire. Therefore, Li Yunxin said the same thing for the third time tonight. He sighed and waved his hand. Wait a moment. Without waiting for the Taoist Lord, who seemed to be at the end of his patience, to speak, and without looking at the demon kings who were looking at each other, Li Yunxin flipped his palm and took out two jade bottles out of nowhere. Then he pulled out the cork of the jade bottle and raised his head. There was a clattering sound of metal colliding. It seemed that he had poured dozens of pills into his mouth. After chewing a few more times, a strange fragrance immediately filled the air, causing the demon kings to stare at it. That fragrance, as well as the terrifyingly rich spiritual power that they could all feel, those were pills. The best of the best. Perhaps each pill required a cultivator with a profound cultivation base to refine for dozens or hundreds of years, experiencing countless failures and exhaustion before they could become a pill. Now, Li Yunxin was pouring them into his mouth in large quantities, like a cow chewing on a peony without any refining or conditioning. Such a waste of natural resources. After eating the two bottles, he casually threw the jade bottles away. Immediately, a group of demons snatched them. To these demon kings who lived in the mountains, which one of the things in the mystic sect Holy Land was not a treasure. However, with a flip of his hand, there were 3 more bottles in his palm. Li Yunxin ate these supreme-grade pills like a whale sucking in water. In just 2 breaths, the time it took for the Taoist lord to recover from his dazed shock, he had already eaten hundreds of pills. Anyone with a bit of cultivation would know how he ate. 100 pills would only be equivalent to 10 pills. The excess medicinal properties would be quickly expelled from his body and dissipate between heaven and earth. It had to be known that when ordinary people obtained an immortal pill, they would either swallow it, take a medicinal bath, or use it as a supplement. After a few days or even hundreds of days, they would slowly absorb it completely. Who had ever seen him eat like this? But even so, 6 breaths later, the golden blood on Li Yunxin's body disappeared, and the huge wound on his chest also disappeared. His aura was pushed to its peak by the medicinal properties. Surging demonic power once again surged in his meridians. When the Taoist lord saw this, he felt as if he had fallen into a dream. His dragon palace was called Crimson Firmament Palace, and he was an expert in Taoist techniques. How could he not cultivate core Tao? Because of this, when he saw Li Yunxin swallow so many extremely precious pills, he temporarily forgot about the battle. Widening his blood-red eyes, he pointed at Li Yunxin and said in a trembling voice, You're wasting these elixirs." Li Yunxin threw away another jade bottle in his palm. Looking down at the demons fighting for the pills like hyenas, he looked up at the Taoist lord and smiled. "None of your business. I'm rich." Chapter 561. Not only that, I have plenty of them. As for the others? He looked at the Tao Lord calmly. He reached out and grabbed the air. Then, a long spear with gold essence and silver soul as its tassel appeared in his hand, emitting a murderous aura and radiating a cold light. His body shook slightly. Then he put on a chain-linked cloud leaf armor, a crown with 2 dragons fighting for pearls, and a pair of boots with a bronze lion's tail dipped in gold. I have plenty of divine weapons and treasured armors. Under the shocked gazes of the Tao Lord and the other demons, he took 2 steps forward in the air, held his spear and stood in the wind. He said calmly, "The warm-up is over. Now as you wish, I'll play with you." His calm words were filled with obvious viciousness. Every word seemed to have been soaked in the most evil poison for 100 years before being fished out and uttered to the Tao Lord, whose expression was now frozen on his face. Amidst the long and intense battles tonight, the scene of deathly silence had appeared more than once. But there had never been a time when it made people feel as if they were suffocating. How scheming. The Tao Lord was stunned for a full 3 breaths. Then he calmed down and stared at Li Yunxin. "But do you think I'm afraid of you?" After he said that, he waved his sleeve and also destroyed his aura to the extreme. "Li Yunxin, take this." His shout was like a rumbling thunder, causing the Demon King's skulls to go numb. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the fiery-robed Tao Lord turned and fled. He didn't hesitate at all. The demons were in an uproar. They thought that their eyes were blinded by Li Yunxin's dazzling jewels and treasures. However, when they focused their eyes again, the Tao Lord had indeed fled hundreds of feet away. Who would have thought that the 5th dragon's son, who had been awe-inspiring in front of the demons and seemed to have the power to command all the demon kings in the world, would actually run away just like that? The crowd of demons was in an uproar, but Li Yunxin only sneered coldly. "The ambition of falling into the formation will only lead to death. I'm not done playing. Where can you go?" As he spoke, his long sword shot out like a bolt of lightning towards the Tao Lord's back. There is a poem to prove it. A cold glint appeared first, followed by the spear like a dragon. His long lance was actually a rare treasure in the world. Although he was fast, he was still not as fast as the Tao Lord's escape. It seemed that he would not be able to catch up to him. However, there seemed to be no need to chase. In front of the frantically fleeing Tao Lord, a speck of cold light suddenly appeared, revealing half a spearhead. It turned out that this treasured lance also had the ability to shatter the void and fake the rules of force. When the Taoist monarch saw this, he was shocked and immediately changed his direction to the side. However, the treasured lance immediately unleashed a storm of attacks that enveloped him from all sides. Seeing that the situation was far from good, he didn't know what treasure he had taken out. First, a layer of golden light shrouded his body. Then, a dazzling golden flower shadow suddenly bloomed in the space, dispersing almost all of the attacks from the treasured lance, leaving only a few scattered phantoms in front of him. When they collided with his golden light, there was a series of clanging sounds like rain falling on banana leaves, but they couldn't hurt him at all. Then the Tao Lord sneered. Want to keep me here? Then he flew forward. It would have been fine if he hadn't said that. Now that he had said it, Li Yunxin also sneered. You want to compete with me in wealth? Come on. After saying that, he waved his hand, and a colorful rain of light instantly sprayed out. When the demons saw that Li Yunxin had created another set of armor, they were all dumbfounded and thought to themselves, he is indeed extravagant. Now that they saw the rain of light, they wondered what kind of magic treasure he had released. However, when the raindrops rapidly grew in size in the air and shone brightly, they were dumbfounded. It was not a magic treasure. It was obvious that he had released dozens of magic treasures at once. Each of them was like a treasured lance with its own divine power. As soon as they appeared, they used their own methods. The demons were dazzled, but before they could see clearly what kind of divine power they had, the Tao Lord, who had already jumped more than 1,000 feet away, was captured again. Seeing the Tao Lord's appearance, the demons had to sigh with emotion. After all, Dragon's son was a demon among demons, a member of the nobility of the Dragon dynasty. Now he was surrounded by more than 30 different kinds of treasures. Some looked like sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Some looked like flower baskets, iron pots, jade hairpins, and so on. There were also some that didn't have a physical form, just shadows. These treasures were like living creatures, eerily facing the Tao Lord and surrounding him. However, this Tao Lord had been running the Crimson Firmament Palace for 2,000 years, and he seemed to have collected many good things. Now it seemed that he had used all of them to save his life. He was surrounded by 49 small swords, forming a sword formation. There were dozens of round, shining beads in between the gaps. The light released from the beads blocked the restrictions, preventing them from enveloping the Tao Lord. There were also dozens of flying knives, flying swords, iron rulers, and scepters. A total of nearly 100 treasures added together to protect him, temporarily keeping him safe. However, these treasures were clearly not of the same grade as the treasures left behind by Saint Yunshan. In just a few breaths, the swords and sabers let out hoarse sounds of being unable to withstand the pressure, and cracks appeared. The Tao Lord struggled for a while, dodging left and right, but still couldn't escape. Only then did he turn to stare at Li Yunxin, shouting in a low voice, I advise you not to force me to fight to the death with you. Li Yunxin sneered and took a step in the void. Immediately, a pure white cloud formed under his feet and supported him. It seemed, it was also a magic treasure. He walked a few steps on this cloud, stared at the Tao Lord for a while and said, Fight to the death with me, do you think you're worthy? That old thing Su Yusong wanted to use the magical power of the mystic realm to kill me, but in the end he got himself killed. Li Yunxin stared at him with a faint smile. Do you want to try? 10 breaths ago, this Tao Lord was full of ambition, and Long Jiu was in a sorry state, as if he was at the end of his rope. But now the situation was reversed and this famous Tao Lord was in prison. He was about to become a stray dog. The situation changed so quickly. So much so that many demon kings in the distance still didn't know what was going on. The Tao Lord looked at Li Yunxin with a ferocious expression. After hesitating for a moment, he didn't say anything, but suddenly turned his head and shouted at the crowd of demons, What are you waiting for? This Li Yunxin has so many treasures on him, and you're only willing to pick up some trash? Now come up and kill him, all the treasures are yours, the Taoist technique that I promised you is also yours. But Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He also turned his face and looked at the crowd of demons, and these demons came here a quarter of an hour ago for the treasures on him. Now, they knew that he really had a lot of rare treasures and they got another promise from the Tao Lord, but they hesitated and hesitated again. Today was different from the past. Even the powerful mystic realm Long Sun died in the hands of Li Yunxin. And he saw that there were still more treasures that he hadn't used. Although the demons were greedy, their lives weren't other people's lives that could be casually taken away to die. Who dared to touch this bad luck? Seeing this, Li Yunxin sneered again, They came to take my treasures but they might not have the life to use them. But wait until I kill you and take your treasures. Although they're just bits and pieces, they can still be used. Tell me, why did they come to me to seek death? The Tao Lord's face became extremely ugly. But he still shouted, A bunch of idiots. Do you think he'll let you go after killing me? Think about what he has on him. When he said this, the magic treasures that protected him gradually couldn't hold on anymore. The 49 flying swords made a twisting sound and soon 4 of them broke into pieces. He has already used so many, how many more can he have? The treasures of Cloud Mountain are the treasures left by the saints of the past, so they must be strictly guarded. If he could take them out when he was just in the true realm, How many heroes among the demons in the past tens of thousands of years don't know how to take them themselves? Look at him now, he's arrogant, but in fact he's deliberately mystifying. He used everything he could in one breath, scaring you so that you don't dare to come forward. Otherwise, why would he say these words to me here and not take my life immediately? Idiots. Great wealth and opportunities are right in front of you. After tonight, when Li Yunxin hides in the mountain, where can you find him? If you refine for 1 or 2,000 years, can you refine the magic treasures on him? What are you waiting for? Although the Daylord's tongue was good, what he said now was a bit far-fetched. If it was in the secular world, he probably wouldn't be able to scare many people. But many of these demons were not as smart as the mortals in the secular world. Moreover, they were short-sighted people who had no standpoint. After he said this, there were actually some who were eager to make trouble, and looked at Li Yunxin with malicious eyes. Seeing this, the Tao Lord exerted all his strength to activate the magic treasures to resist the pressure of Li Yunxin's treasures, and shouted with all his might, "Think again. This Li Yunxin dared to kill Long Jiao, dared to kill Long Air, and now killed me. He has already become an enemy of the dragons. He is such a fake, he will be killed by the world in the future. That's why he's so arrogant and crazy. Once I die, he will definitely kill you. If you don't help me now, just wait for me to be slaughtered like a pig or a dog after I die." He mentioned counterfeits, which was a new term for the demons. Before this, they had always called him Li Yunxin, which was a personal name. It was not unusual for demons to have a personal name. For example, Red Lady's personal name was Li Xinyu, and Zither Lady's personal name was Bailey Qinxin. However, fiendish demons had complicated and contradictory feelings towards humans. When they were livestock, they were naturally inferior to humans. They wholeheartedly wanted to achieve the Tao and transform into human form, so that they could cultivate with the meridians and meridians of humans. However, after transforming into humans, they had the spiritual intelligence of humans, and their bodies were far stronger than that of humans. Moreover, they saw the stupidity and weakness of mortals, so they looked down on them and wanted to use them as food. But there were also cultivators among humans, and the power of Shenmen was also oppressing the demons. Chapter 562. Therefore, these many emotions intertwined together, causing them to have a very complicated feeling towards human names. On the one hand, they wanted this name. On the other hand, they felt that it was undignified and would be ridiculed by others. Only the most unruly and powerful part of them didn't mind this. Lord Taoist and these demons called Li Yunxin, instead of Lord of Wei River, Qi Wen, or even Dragon Jiao, which was actually very disdainful. Now that the word impostor was mentioned, some demons who didn't understand asked what it meant. Not many people knew that Dragon Jiao was possessed by a person. In the past, only a limited number of famous great demon kings under Lord Tongtian and Guqin Monarch had heard of it. Now that it had been mentioned, the news quickly spread. Everyone knew that Dragon Jiao used to be a mere transcendent state. What they didn't know was that Dragon Jiao, as Dragon's son, was the shame of demons. Not only was his realm low, but he was also killed and possessed by a person. That person was the current Li Yunxin. The ninth young master used to hide in the Wei River and had a mysterious great demon Lord Dongting by his side. It could be said that he was monitoring or protecting him, but after all, the demons knew very little about the ninth dragon's son. If it wasn't for today's incident, many demons would have thought that this Li Yunxin was the previous Dragon Jiao. When the words really spread, the demons looked at Li Yunxin in a different way. For these demons who had no standpoint, many factors could cause a subtle change in their attitude. Now that they knew that Li Yunxin was not the real dragons, first a demonic voice called out. "If this is true, this Li Yunxin killed Lord Taoist, I'm afraid that he will really come to us." Then someone said, "Li Yunxin, is what Lord Taoist said true?" After all, there were many demons. It was like a dark cloud surrounding the two people who were fighting. Some of the busybodies didn't have to worry about being caught if they were to talk. So, for a moment, voices of agreement rose from all around. It was as if a pack of wolves had surrounded their prey and were testing the waters before launching an all-out attack. It seemed as if they were about to swarm forward together. How could Li Yunxin answer their nonsense? He stood still on the cloud. He brandished the treasured lance in his hand and said coldly, "If you want to seek death, then come. Come on, if I let any of you leave alive, then I'll consider my title as the Wei River Lord just an empty title." He was practically saying this to all the demon kings in the world. It could be said that he was the most arrogant person in the world. As a result, shouts and curses could be heard from all directions, but in the end, no one rushed forward. When the Tao Lord saw this, he was delighted and was about to speak again. Suddenly someone said, "Fifth brother said earlier that no one is allowed to interfere. Although there is a madman from the Xianmen sect here, so it can't be considered a fair duel, he is still a human cultivator. He can't be considered as a demon, so I'll just pretend that he doesn't exist. But now, the human cultivator is already dead, and everyone here is a fiendish demon. At this time, if anyone dares to interfere, I'll be the first to not allow it. The words that I, the dragons, say in front of all the demons in the world, can't be ignored." Hearing this voice, the Tao Lord's expression changed greatly. He saw that the group of demons in the sky slowly parted to form a path. It was the dragon third evil spirit and the female demon beside her, by Yunxin, who came on the cloud. 15 minutes ago he wasn't afraid of these two people. At that time he was confident that he had the power to kill Li Yunxin in an instant. Moreover, the hearts of all the demon kings were on his side. If the evil spirit came to help Li Yunxin, he only needed to ask the demons to stop him. In fact, when he said that he didn't want the demons to interfere, it was to guard against this. But now the situation was reversed and his third sister appeared. It was like adding snow to snow. Previously, Li Yunxin said that the Tao Lord was an interesting fiendish demon. At this time, the Tao Lord was indeed interesting. When the evil spirit was seriously injured, he said in the sky that he didn't deserve to be Dragon's son, but Pengzi. Now he was trapped in Li Yunxin's attack and couldn't escape temporarily, so his attitude changed drastically. "Third sister. What are you talking about?" He shouted immediately, "This Li Yunxin killed our ninth brother and took his body? Third sister, are you going to treat him as your family now? We are real siblings. Third sister, don't be fooled by his flowery words." Li Yunxin laughed loudly and pointed at the Tao Lord from afar. "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. This is the first time I've seen a fiendish demon like you. Let me see what else you can say." But the Tao Lord's expression didn't change at all. He ignored Li Yunxin's sarcasm and said, "Third sister, did you receive some benefits from him, and also want to be enemies with all the demons in the world? Don't you even remember the death of our ninth brother? It's a pity that our ninth brother died so miserably. That day I saw him with my own eyes. I saw it with my own eyes." His words of grief and indignation were interrupted again. What did fifth brother see with his own eyes? Hearing this voice, the Tao Lord frowned. The demons also looked in the direction of the voice, and were somewhat puzzled. This time it was a man's voice. But although he called the Tao Lord Swan fifth brother, the Tao Lord didn't have any impression of him. Then another person walked out from the crowd of demons. This person was extremely handsome. Even according to the weird aesthetic standards of the demons, Li Yunxin was also very beautiful. At least among the demons now, no one was better than him. However, the person who had just walked out was even more handsome than him. He was also wearing a white robe. Although his face was calm, there was a hint of evil charm. In this aspect it formed a contrast with Li Yunxin. Both of them were handsome. But Li Yunxin's handsomeness made people feel close to him when they saw him. But this person only made people afraid of being charmed by him. This person didn't hide his aura at all. It was even as if he was showing off, and he released it without any scruples. The demons knew that this was a great demon at the peak of the true realm. The peak of the true realm was indeed an extremely powerful cultivation in the whole world. But in this situation it wasn't the top. There was a fiend lord at the peak of the profound realm. A Tao Lord at the Shi mystical realm. And there was also Li Yunxin who was at the same realm. Not to mention that there were more than 10 profound realm and even more true realm demons among the demons. They didn't know why this person was showing off. The Tao Lord stared at him and frowned. "Who are you?" This person called him fifth brother. However, he was not one of the remaining dragon sons that the Tao Lord knew. He could not even match his cultivation level. But the strange thing was, he did have dragon chi on him. But the dragon chi made him frown. He felt that there was something else mixed in it that he couldn't explain. But among the demons, a voice suddenly exclaimed, "Didn't they say, he died?" Someone else asked the person who spoke. Hearing this, the demon hesitated for a while. Finally, he said with certainty, "Isn't this Dragon Geo? I once passed by Wei River, and met Dragon Geo." As soon as he said this, there were a few voices echoing him. Some said it was true, some said they had seen him before. The demons were in an uproar. The Tao Lord was even more surprised and shouted, "Who is misleading us?" The handsome man smiled evilly, squinted his eyes and looked at the source of the voice. "Ha, it's you. You scorpion spirit passed by my Wei River and ate a family of 3 people in the city. I wanted to kill you but you escaped. You were only at the transcendent realm then. Now you have cultivated to the true realm. You've really improved. The scorpion spirit didn't say anything. It looked like he was right. He was afraid of being sought revenge, so he quickly retreated. The Tao Lord widened his eyes. Where did this madman come from? My 9th brother has been killed by Li Yunxin. 5th brother, I'm still alive. The man looked at the Tao Lord with a malicious gaze. Not only am I alive, but I have also cultivated to the peak of the true realm. 5th brother, you said I was killed in front of all the demons? What are your intentions? As he said this, his appearance changed. Fine scales appeared on his face, and a pair of blood-red coral antlers grew out of his forehead. Clouds and mist rose under his sleeves. He really was dragons. Chiwen. The 9th young master stared at the Tao Lord, and then slowly turned his head to look at the demons. He said darkly, because of a coincidence, I had to cultivate in seclusion. So I temporarily entrusted Wei River to Li Yunxin. This Li Yunxin is good at doing things, and he's also my friend. Later he was summoned by Shinryu, who personally conferred Wei River to him. Thus, the title of Wei River Lord naturally belonged to him. My 3rd sister can testify to this. If there is a rumor that I was killed and possessed, he's really evil and should be punished. The demons were speechless. Or perhaps they had a lot of things to say. But with 4 dragon sons, including one who was said to be dead, they really didn't understand the current situation. How dare they talk nonsense? The Tao Lord was furious. You idiot. I'll take it that you're really Chiwen of the Dragon 9? Let me ask you, have you ever thought about what you said for Li Yunxin because of some petty benefits, or because you were threatened by them? Have you ever thought about how you will live in the future if you admit that your title and land belong to him in front of all the heroes in the world? Where will you go? You don't have to worry about this. Li Yunxin had been watching the show with cold eyes. Now he finally opened his mouth and said lazily, the Lord of Shinryu is naturally powerful. He conferred me the title of Wei River Lord and gave me Wei River. How could he not consider what you said? Speaking of this, his tone gradually turned cold. The Lord already knew. Long de Chionyo and Long Heir of Hatred were plotting against me. So I got rid of these 2 troubles. He also said that the 9th young master had made great contributions in protecting the Dongting dragon soul, so I couldn't mistreat him. So, after killing Long Heir of Hatred, he turned his palm and held a golden object. His face turned serious and he shouted, Dragon 9, listen to the title. The 9th young master immediately stepped forward on a cloud and knelt down on one knee toward the object in Li Yunxin's palm, saying, Dragon 9, receive the token of Shinryu. Li Yunxin shouted again, the Dragon God token is here, pass on the Imperial Edict of Shinryu. Long Heir of Hatred plotted treason and ordered the Lord of Wei River to kill him. His title is Lord Tongtian, and his fief is heaven-reaching. Chiwen of the Dragon 9. Seeing the Dragon God token is like seeing the Lord of God in person. Anyone who disobeys will be killed by all the monsters in the world. The 9th young master stood up. He looked straight into Li Yunxin's eyes and said in a deep voice, Chiwen of the Lord Tongtian. Thank the Lord of Shinryu for his grace. Chapter 563. The group of demons was silent. In fact, since the moment that golden object appeared in Li Yunxin's hand, no one dared to speak anymore. These demons might not recognize the shape of that object, but they could definitely feel the aura that was emitted from that object. It was so powerful that it made them want to bow down and worship it. The long, narrow, and shiny object in Li Yunxin's hand was the Dragon God token. The Divine Dragon token was made from a piece of scale armor that the true Dragon Monarch had broken when he fought against the Golden Rock King. The Lord Shinryu was the ruler of all demons in the world. But her control was not as strong as that of a human emperor, it was more like a title. Although the Dragon God token was a legendary treasure, it did have the powerful aura of Shinryu. However, if Li Yunxin were to take it out and instruct a great demon to do something, the great demon would most likely agree on the surface or even ignore her. But Li Yunxin took it out in the current situation, and it made the best use of it. The Dragon Sun was fighting, and the demons who had no side were watching and wavering. It seemed that everyone's words were reasonable, but it was not enough to make the final decision and completely suppress the other side. At this time he took out this thing that had no power, but was extremely sacred among the demons. Looking at the Lord Taoist's pale face, he knew that the situation was irreversible. Strength and reason. Now both were not on his side. What made him even angrier was that Li Yunxin took out this thing and made up some nonsense about the Lord Shinryu's Imperial Edict. which made him change the incident of killing Lord Tongtian hatred into acting on the Lord Shinryu's order. How could the 9 of them not know what the Lord Tongtian was thinking? Indeed, they hoped that their power would be weakened. Li Yunxin's fake edict would probably turn into reality in the future. Not only would he not receive any punishment, he would even be rewarded by the Shinryu. Why? And what's with that Long Jiao? How did he survive? He did not look like a ghostly cultivator. At this time, Li Yunxin turned to look at him and sternly shouted, "Lao Ai! I was ordered by the divine monarch to kill the rebellious minister, hatred, but you obstructed me in every possible way and made things difficult for me." He even gathered a group of demon kings and demon generals to rebel. "Are you convinced that I will kill you today?" The Tao Lord cursed, "Bullsh*t. Who would believe your nonsense? Ask them if they believe it. Do you believe it yourself?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Li Yunxin could say anything, the group of demons immediately shouted, "Lord Wei River is wise. The Divine Lord is wise. We don't know the truth and came here to watch. How would we know that he has sinister intentions?" Exactly, this mixed fur lion betrayed his superiors. His death is not to be regretted. We are so excited that we can't wait to eat his flesh. Well said. Well said. We were deceived by this rebellious minister. We are ashamed of the Shinryu's grace. Li Yunxin said that the divine monarch was a hypocrite, and these demon kings were the real villains. They really did not have any standpoint, they just listened to the wind and thought it was the rain. Now that he shouted like this, the Tao Lord finally tasted what Li Yunxin had experienced before. After a moment of being stunned, he roared, "Good! You will regret this sooner or later." He said a lot of things just to use the momentum of the group of demons to break Li Yunxin's strength. He did not expect that both were in the hands of Li Yunxin. He could not get any benefits and there was no room for negotiation. Even if he was a hypocrite, he was still a big demon of the dragons. Therefore his arrogant courage finally burst out at this moment. His body shook violently and he grew with the wind. Originally, he was surrounded by many magic treasures to protect him. Now, his body that was wrapped in a fiery red robe suddenly revealed by Anne's original form, and he grew dozens of feet. In an instant, those magic treasures exploded with a bang, turning into countless streams of light. As a result, when his magic treasures were destroyed, the group of demons immediately let out a loud sigh, as if those magic treasures were already in their pockets. This made by an even angrier, and with another roar, he revealed his true form that was hundreds of feet long. Only now did he realize that he had really been cautious before. Li Yunxin used many magic treasures, and when he saw that the situation was not good, he turned around and ran. He seemed to be extremely afraid of those things. But now that he knew that he had no way out, he had to unleash his ferocious nature. When this tyrannical true form appeared, not only did he destroy his own magic treasures, but he also scattered the magic treasures that were used to trap him, turning them into streams of light and returning to Li Yunxin's palm. Although this also caused many huge and terrible wounds to appear on his body, and the golden blood fell like a waterfall into the sea of fire on the ground, it was enough to show the tyrannical true form of the dragons. When he was really at his wit's end, he still had the power to fight back. Li Yunxin kept the magic treasures that were scattered by in his palm, looked down at them, then threw them back and snorted coldly, "Useless things. Then I'll reward you." Those dozens of magic treasures fell from the sky like garbage. This time the eyes of the group of demons were red, and the ground was in a mess. Because just now, he clearly saw that when Lao Ai smashed those dozens of magical treasures into pieces, it was merely smashing them into pieces. Most of the magic treasures were intact and only a few were damaged. But even those few only had insignificant cracks, and were no different from undamaged jades. Now this way River Lord, just because he failed to trap Bayan, he casually threw them away saying they were useless things. What a damn generous man. There was probably no one else in the world who could be so generous. He was really a dragon king who gave away his wealth. The group of demons fought among themselves. However, this time, those who fought over the magic treasures were all big demon kings who didn't care about the garbage that Li Yunxin threw away. More demon kings and demon generals with slightly lower cultivation levels didn't dare to get involved in this mess, so they stared at Li Yunxin who was high up in the sky. They really wanted this generous Wei River Lord to throw down a few more pieces of trash, the best kind of course, so that they could have a share. Now Li Yunxin also shouted, "Good. Finally you look a bit like Dragon's son." Then he raised the long spear in his hand and bravely pounced forward. When demons fought in human form, they had the advantage of using divine abilities, but they weren't good at defense. If they fought with their half-human half-demon fiend god bodies, they could take care of both. But ultimately they weren't as strong as their true bodies. Now that Bian was fighting against Li Yunxin, it didn't have much of an advantage in terms of treasures and divine abilities, so it revealed its true body, which was hundreds of feet tall, in order to fight. But Li Yunxin still fought it head-on in his human form, which was extremely fierce. When Bian saw him coming, it first opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of red poisonous fire. Now that its body was huge, when it spat out the fire, it swayed its head in the sky so the range of the fire was extremely large, and two enlightened Dao masters who couldn't dodge in time were caught in it. In an instant, the two true realm demon kings were turned into ashes, not even leaving behind a scream. The fire was so terrifying, but Li Yunxin's body exploded with a brilliant light, and he directly rushed in. The spear went straight for the throat of the giant Bian beast. Bian knew the power of his treasured spear, but he didn't panic. He shook his head again and the thick mane on his neck opened up like a big umbrella. No one knew what kind of divine ability he was born with. The space in front of his head fluctuated horribly, and Li Yunxin's body, which was clearly pouncing forward, suddenly flew backward, and the brilliant light on his body was quickly extinguished. In the blink of an eye, the treasured armor was smashed into pieces, and the white robe underneath was revealed. Only the treasured spear in his hand wasn't affected. In the instant that Li Yunxin was sent flying backward, it disappeared. The next moment, it suddenly appeared in the void above Bian's head, and stabbed down fiercely. Bian's true body was huge. To him, this treasured spear was like a thin needle. But everyone knew how terrifying this thin needle was. In the blink of an eye, it went into its head and Bian let out a deafening scream. Seeing this, even the evil lord frowned and said in shock, What kind of evil technique is he practicing? As Li Yunxin's body flew backward, he shook violently. The broken armor that was still hanging on his body was shaken into tiny fragments by him and fell to the ground. At this moment, another layer of brilliant treasured armor appeared from the white robe, and he was armed. He laughed in midair. Ha! Your technique is just esos. Take another strike from me. He waved his hand again. The treasured spear that went into Bian's head came out of Bian's left eye with a buzz, and a shower of blood poured out. Being severely injured, Long Sun's screams became even louder, and the whole ground shook slightly. Looking at the treasured spear that returned to Li Yunxin's hand, the long and sharp spearhead had become a discus. It was as if a blacksmith had heated it in a furnace and hammered it into this state. But in fact, because Long Sun's physical body was too strong, the treasured spear went through his head and came out of his left eye, and it was destroyed. Seeing this scene, the group of demons immediately burst into cheers. They were not cheering for the evil lord being severely injured, but for the treasured spear to be lost again. As expected, Li Yunxin held it in his hand, swept it slightly and then threw it far away. This thing buzzed as it landed in the distance, attracting a swarm of demons to swarm towards it. His heroism made even Bai Yunxin's heart ache. She frowned and said to the evil lord, "This thing, he lost it. Even if he brought out all the treasures in Cloud Mountain he shouldn't have." But the evil lord only looked at Li Yunxin's figure. He must have his reasons for doing this. Let's wait and see. In fact, his expression was slightly shocked. In this world, from ancient times until now, probably no one had ever seen a person with so many treasures on him. If the two Cloud Mountain sages brought all of these with them when they came out of the mountain, the demons would have a huge headache. Lao Ai's brain was severely injured, but he seemed to be fine. He was the most unusual one among the Dragon Sun. He was said to have been comprehending Tao in Crimson Cloud Palace. The move he had used earlier was very powerful. But everyone knew that it shouldn't be that powerful. The fifth son of the Dragon Sun at his peak should be much stronger than he was now, right? Right at this moment, a treasured sword appeared in Li Yunxin's hand. This treasured sword looked very different from the previous two weapons. The previous two weapons were bright and shiny, and looked very exaggerated. With one look, one could tell that they must be extraordinary and they were rare immortal treasures. However, this sword indeed looked like a piece of scrap metal. The body of the sword was full of rust, and there was no light to speak of. It looked like an iron sword that had been soaked in muddy water for a year and a half. It was so rusty that it would break at a touch. The demons were surprised to see him take out this thing. It seemed like Li Yunxin was also surprised. He did not expect that he would casually take out this thing. But at this moment, Lao Ai seemed to realize that if he did not use his full strength today, he would not be able to leave here alive. So he shouted, "Good, good, good. You forced me to do this." As soon as he said that, his real body quickly dissipated and shrunk, revealing his godly body. Logically, his real body could not withstand Li Yunxin's treasures. This godly body would only be more badly injured. But seeing this, the evil lord frowned and said in a low voice, "Strange." Not only did the evil lord think it was strange, even Li Yunxin felt it was strange. Because the godly body of the Tao Lord looked a little familiar. Actually, it was normal that it looked familiar. It was a form between a real body and a human form. But now, the godly body of the Tao Lord did not look like the Lao AI at all. His body was covered with pale green armor instead of scales. Large pieces of exoskeleton wrapped around him, as if they were forged from black iron. They shone with a cold light in the fire. There were fierce and sharp bone spurs on the exoskeleton, like thistles and thorns, reaching high into the sky. Every time he breathed, a fiery red mist would rise from the gaps of the armor, causing the air within a few feet around him to distort because of the heat. This appearance was familiar to everyone in the array today. It was very similar to the two scary skeletons. Li Yunxin immediately frowned and stared at him. "What are you?" The Tao Lord spoke in a low and hoarse voice, as if metal was squeezing against each other. He said, "Ever since I cultivated this crimson firmament Dharma body, I have never shown it in front of others. You are the one who is seeking death today, forcing me to show it. Li Yunxin, today I will sacrifice your life to it." After he said this, his arms suddenly sank. With his terrifying body as the center, the fire within a few miles was extinguished. It was as if he had absorbed all the heat and light, leaving only coldness and darkness in the world. Previously, he had used his real body to spit fire and burn two demon kings who could not dodge in time to ashes. Therefore, the group of demons had retreated a lot so that they would not be affected. Who would have thought that the Tao Lord would use this technique again? As the flames were extinguished, the monster kings who were caught up in the shockwaves of the Tao Lord's power began to fall from the skies like dumplings, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Not only did he look shockingly similar to the skeletons, but his ability was also similar. He had forbidden these demon kings from using their supernatural powers. Seeing this, the Tao Lord immediately laughed strangely. "Ah! Li Yunxin, let's see what you can do to me with that broken metal." Chapter 564. In the time it took to say that, the Tao Lord pounced towards Li Yunxin. As he moved, the restrictions surrounding him also moved, enveloping many demon kings within them. In the end, those unlucky fellows also fell into the sea of fire one by one, presumably in a flurry. Li Yunxin seems to be surprised to see him like this. She doesn't attack but retreats. Stepping on the auspicious cloud, she walks hundreds of feet away. It seems that she wants to figure out his situation first. At this moment, the evil lord flicked his wrist, which was hidden in his black sleeves, and shot out a sharp demonic power. However, as soon as her monster power enters the inhibition of the Lord of Tao, it disappears immediately. The situation is exactly the same as when she fought with the skeleton. The previous scene is not a camouflage but a powerful inhibition. This inhibition is different from all the supernatural powers that the Lord of Tao knows. Even people from Daotong and Kenzo can't do anything about it. Where did the Lord of Tao learn the skills of the skeleton? Why does he only use it now? However, these thoughts only appear in her mind for a second. The evil lord immediately pulls Bai Yunxin back. He also says to the ninth young master who is standing beside them and staring at Li Yunxin, "Step back." It's weird. Human feelings are different in the human world, so is the world of demons. The dragon Jiuqi Kiss used to have low personal ability and was controlled by the old lord of Dongting. Therefore, his brothers and sisters didn't want to associate with him. Whether they looked down on him or not, it's more because of the Lord Dongting. The Lord Dongting has high personal ability and has been operating in Dongting for a long time. It's not appropriate for others to peep into his territory when they have nothing to do. Therefore, the relationship between the evil lord and the ninth younger brother is actually very indifferent. Now the evil lord also reminds him. Maybe it's because she once regarded Li Yunxin as her ninth younger brother, so she loves him because of him. However, the ninth young master doesn't leave immediately. He hesitates for a while. The evil lord sees the eagerness in his eyes. She had rarely seen this kind of light in a demon's eyes. It meant that he was eager to try, it meant that he had an infinite longing for this world, and it even meant that he had some wild ambitions. She understood immediately after thinking about it. Her ninth brother used to be depressed and had a low cultivation base. If it was an ordinary fiendish demon it would have been fine. However, it just had to be Long Sun. The huge contrast would inevitably leave an indelible mark in his heart and bring about many problems. Now, because of Li Yunxin, he possessed power that he had never dared to imagine before. Naturally, he was eager to try. It was like a swordsman obtaining a treasured sword, or a saber user obtaining a treasured saber. When a child learning to write gets a new notebook, they will want to try it out immediately. Bai Yunxin snorted, "Little Nine Dragon, don't ask for trouble. I'm afraid that even Li Yunxin will have to spend a lot of effort to deal with him. Don't give him more trouble." The ninth young master suddenly turned around and stared at Bai Yunxin. For a moment, his face showed a terrible and ferocious expression, which made him look extremely ferocious. But soon, his expression turned into pure anger. It seemed that when he saw Bai Yunxin he realized he had reached the peak of the true realm. However, Bai Yunxin had gone one step further and was also in the mysterious realm. Between them there was an insurmountable gap. It was really unlucky. Seeing his expression, Bai Yunxin also stared at him and showed a fierce expression. "Well, Little Nine Dragon, I haven't seen you for a month or two, but you have improved a lot. Have you forgotten the time when you were chased by me?" The ninth young master's face showed an embarrassed expression. He snorted and snorted again and again, then said bitterly, "I saved his life. Twice, thrice." As he said so, he slowly retreated. At this time, the Lord Taoist had already fought with Li Yunxin. Previously, the Lord Taoist used his Tao and divine powers, and Li Yunxin used his treasured armor to fight with him. But now the situation was reversed. The Lord Taoist used his terrifying armor to pounce on Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin was also afraid of the restrictive spell and moved away from him. After all, the Lord Taoist had many magic treasures and methods. But when the needles shot out from his palm, they were full of vigor. But once they flew into the Lord Taoist's restrictive spell, they immediately lost their brilliance and became ordinary objects. These things couldn't hurt the Lord Taoist's sturdy armor at all. He reached out his hand and casually touched his body to catch the magic treasures. Then, like Li Yunxin, he sprinkled the magic treasures on the ground and shouted, "You want these things? Wait until I kill him. Ah, I can have them as I please." His laughter at this time seemed to be crazy. It seemed that becoming like this had also affected his mind, so he lost his previous sinister but rational and cautious appearance and completely became a madman. The divine powers that Li Yunxin's magic treasures released were useless against him, but the Lord Taoist couldn't catch up to Li Yunxin, who was on the auspicious cloud. As a result, this new round of battle became tedious and boring after experiencing an imposing aura that caused everyone in the arena to feel insecure. To the demons, it wasn't even as interesting as when the Lord Taoist was chased by Li Yunxin. At least at that time, Li Yunxin would leave behind many broken magic treasures. But now what the Lord Taoist left behind were all intact. They weren't something that the numerous low-level demon kings and demon generals could covet. Just like that, the 15 minutes of battle passed quickly. The Lord Taoist began to become more and more angry. He let out a crazy roar, but Li Yunxin moved more and more calmly, as if he had slowly figured out his methods and was thinking of new ways. Thus, no one realized that there was actually another person nearby. It was a genuine person, and a her at that. It was about 10 li away from where Li Yunxin and the Lord Taoist were fighting. Looking from here, even the light of the fire had become indistinct, and the group of demons was just a mass of black mist. A woman stood in the shadow of a short tree, her figure blending into the darkness. Her breathing was very slow, almost non-existent. Her eyes were very bright as she focused 10 li away. It was as if she didn't need anything to see the situation there. Even a great demon like the Fiend Lord, whose cultivation was almost at the peak of the Xian realm, didn't sense her existence. After watching for a while, she finally moved. She first closed her eyes slightly and thought quietly as if considering something. Then she opened her mouth and sighed lightly. "Ah, he isn't the person we're looking for. Master, are you sure?" So, she wasn't the only person in the shadow of the short tree. There was also a man standing behind her. Speaking of this man, Li Yunxin should be familiar with him. He had met him twice before. Once in the city of Wei in the kingdom of Qing and the other in Rong in the kingdom of Yu. It was none other than shopkeeper Wang of Munanju. In Rong in the kingdom of Yu, he had contacted Li Yunxin and said a lot. The woman didn't speak. She just closed her eyes again as if calculating something. Shopkeeper Wang waited quietly for 3 breaths. Seeing that his mistress hadn't spoken, he lowered his voice and slowly said, "But, There shouldn't be anyone more suitable than him. When we were in Little Rock, we said he wouldn't be able to survive the battle of the Marquises. But now not only is he alive, he's turned his situation around. Before he was besieged on all sides. Now he's become a vassal and has won over a few powerful allies. Although we've helped a bit, in the end, it's still him who has some shocking abilities. Speaking to this point, he carefully looked at the woman's expression. Seeing that she wasn't unhappy, he continued, "What is the master not satisfied with? From the moment he stepped out of that mountain village, we've been watching him and testing him. I've never seen anyone who could make the master spend so much effort. These days, for him, we've mobilized a lot of manpower and resources." But shopkeeper Wang sighed. "The person the master is looking for, what does he look like?" The woman still stood there for a long time. Then she let out a light breath and took a step forward. Thus she walked out of the shadows. Her appearance was illuminated by the light from the sky and the fire in the distance. This was an extremely shocking beauty. It was almost difficult to describe with words. It was Taoish Qing Shui, who had lived in the capital of the Qing kingdom. How could I not know what you're talking about? Using extremely secretive methods to change the direction of the world. Involving him in the test and making sure that a smart person like him wouldn't see through it and that he wouldn't really die. This kind of difficulty is also very difficult for me. Speaking to this point, she raised her hand. She stretched out a slender finger in the dim light and seemed to be stirring something aimlessly. Then she sighed softly. "I thought that he had forgotten many things, but now it seems that he really doesn't know. Now he's afraid of this Lord of Taoism. Perhaps he really isn't the person I'm looking for. But since you think so highly of him, give him one last chance." Listening to her tone, it seemed that she had given Li Yunxin many tests and many chances. However, Li Yunxin failed again and again. Thus, at this moment, this beautiful Taoish Qing Shui had lost hope and confidence in him. Shopkeeper Wang still wanted to say something, but Taoish Qing Shui's finger had already hooked. "But I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Just wait and see." After saying this, she turned and walked into the distance. It looked like she was about to leave. At the same time, Li Yunxin, who had been cautiously keeping a distance from the Lord of Taoism and wandering around to find an opportunity, suddenly froze. It wasn't his problem. It seemed to be the problem of this world. The spiritual power was suddenly cut off for a moment. The spiritual power between heaven and earth and the bodies of demons and cultivators were inextricably linked. Even when he used the heaven and earth mother plate to disturb the chi of this place, the connection was not broken. It just became chaotic. But right now, at that moment, it was as if the world became a vacuum, all the spiritual power disappeared or was isolated from his body for a moment. This became some kind of terrible pressure. The spiritual power in his body tried to gush out and dissipate between heaven and earth. This moment was extremely short, so short that it didn't cause any substantial effect on his body. But one should know that he was fighting with the Lord of Taoism now. The speed of the two of them running in the sky was extremely fast. At the moment when his body was slightly stiff, the terrible restriction of the Lord of Taoism had already enveloped him. At this moment, the auspicious cloud that originally gathered beneath his feet, allowing his movements to become even more nimble, suddenly scattered, becoming the most ordinary mist. Some magic treasures that were hovering around him and providing him with enchantment protection fell one after another, like a flock of birds that died in an instant. Li Yunxin's body lost its support and suddenly began to fall. Seeing this scene, the demons almost exclaimed at the same time. This exclamation was not because he sympathized with or loved Li Yunxin. She was just surprised at why he had suddenly stopped in his tracks, ruining the good situation and seeking his own death. Bai Yunxin grabbed the evil lord's hand and shouted, "Lord!" The evil lord was also puzzled. But at this moment, it was too late to say anything. The Lord of Taoism let out a series of terrible laughter and flew towards Li Yunxin. The distance between the two of them was not too far. Now, it was only a moment before he reached Li Yunxin, in the sky, above the fire. The Lord of Taoism stretched out his bony claws and went straight for Li Yunxin's heart. Li Yunxin was below him, looking up at him, still holding the rusty sword in his hand. It seemed that because he had lost the supernatural power of waving the air, his limbs were not agile and he couldn't fight back for a moment. Bai Yunxin screamed in horror. The ninth young master was also shocked. Shopkeeper Wang, who was watching from the shadows 10 miles away, was equally shocked. But he was not looking at them with his naked eyes. He was holding a long cylinder in his hand. Li Yunxin could tell that it was a pair of binoculars. The workmanship was rough and it was the style of this world. Maybe it was made by the skilled craftsman in Moon Enju. But no matter what, the effect was surprisingly good. Shopkeeper Wang saw everything and said in a low voice. But Daoist Qingshui didn't turn around. It was as if he already knew the situation. He took another 2 steps and said, "You have seen it. Let's go. The person we are looking for will not die here. We have wasted so much time and we have to start from the beginning." Then he heard Shopkeeper Wang's voice. "Master, you mean, if he is not dead?" Daoist Qingshui stopped. After a moment of silence, he turned around and frowned slightly. He saw Shopkeeper Wang's eyes wide open and pointing to a distance. "Then, Master, he is the person we are looking for." When Daoist Qingshui looked 10 miles away, he saw such a scene. The Daoist Qingshui was pouncing down like an eagle. The sharp nails of his ferocious claws were touching Li Yunxin's chest. If he exerted a little more force, the claws would sink into his flesh and pierce through his heart. Li Yunxin, on the other hand, was descending with a rusted sword in her hand. However, the moment when the demons, by Yunxin, the 9th young master, and even Shopkeeper Wang couldn't help but gasp, it did not end as quickly as they thought. In fact, it lasted for 3 whole breaths. The Daoist Qingshui was falling down at the same speed as the Daoist Qingshui. The Daoist Qingshui was about to succeed, but there was still a little distance between them. After a while, only then did everyone realize that Li Yunxin was actually flying backwards as well. The treasures under his feet and the treasures around him all lost their powers and fell down, but he didn't. That seemed to be the case. After a full 3 breaths, the Tao Lord and Li Yunxin realized this. Li Yunxin herself was rather surprised, and both of them were stunned at the same time. The situation was very awkward. The next moment, the Daoist Qingshui screamed and jumped back. "How can this be?" Li Yunxin seemed to have just realized it and stabbed with his sword. "There are many things that you can't imagine. Watch my sword." Chapter 565. At this time, Li Yunxin's treasured armor and sword had already lost the magical properties bestowed upon them by Taoism. They had become the most ordinary weapons. They might even be less suitable than the swords and armors worn by the people of Jianghu. The people of Jianghu used steel swords and armor. They didn't have any magical abilities to rely on, so they focused on the most basic properties. Folding and forging were the highest goals pursued by the craftsmen of the Jianghu. However, when cultivators refine magic treasures, they might do the opposite. Perhaps some weapons and armors were made of materials that were sharper and stronger than those of the Jianghu, but others, such as the armor Li Yunxin was wearing, were mainly made of soft copper, tin, and gold. These materials, along with other natural treasures, were the most effective in forming a formation. Once the formation was formed, the magical abilities attached to it might allow the armor to withstand the attacks of a battering ram or the attacks of a profound realm demon. Then it naturally didn't matter what material was used. Thus, under the Taoist Lord's restriction, the awe-inspiring armor on his body became like chicken ribs. Li Yunxin knew this. Therefore, as he thrust the sword forward, he was ready in his palms. As soon as the rusty thing broke, he would shatter the useless armor he wore, throw away the weapon, which was inexplicably and surely broken, and take out another that would be of use. His strike was crafty and sudden. Even if the Taoist Lord wanted to dodge, he couldn't. One must know that Li Yunxin had put in effort on the path of swordsmanship. Although he wasn't as brilliant as a Kenzo disciple, and couldn't compare to the top experts of Jianghu, but with his strong control over his muscles, he could improve a lot with just a little practice. However, this Taoist Lord was a demon, born with magical abilities and a tyrannical body. Why would he learn some *T swordsmanship? At this time he would be at a great disadvantage in a hand-to-hand fight. Li Yunxin's sword first went for his ribs, then changed direction midway to stab his face. When he dodged to the side, it unexpectedly stabbed his neck like a ghost. When had the Taoist Lord ever fought with someone like this? So, he decided not to dodge, and instead he relied on his sturdy outer armor to take the attack head-on. The rusted sword, which should have been shattered, cut through his outer armor without any hindrance and pierced into his neck. About a third of the blade had pierced into the Taoist monarch's shoulder blade, revealing the tip of the sword through the ferocious bone spur under the Taoist monarch's shoulder blade. The immense and terrifying pain caused the Tao Lord to be momentarily unable to cry out. But he was even more astonished. Just like Li Yunxin, he had never thought that the sword could be so sharp. The two clashed in an instant. In the next moment, Li Yunxin exerted force and slashed the sword out of the Tao Lord's body, chopping off one of his arms. Then he looked at the sword in his hand in surprise. However, its appearance had changed. It used to be stained with rust. Now all the rust had disappeared. It seemed that when the sword was stabbed into the Daelord's body, Long Sun's tough muscles and armor scraped off the rust, revealing the sword beneath. However, the sword did not radiate a cold light. This did not mean that it was not bright. In fact, the sword was as bright and smooth as a mirror. It was just that it was restrained and not ostentatious. All the light was restrained in the blade and did not radiate outwards at all. If one had to describe it, it should be said that it seemed to be made of solidified light. At this time, Li Yunxin finally remembered what it was. When he was trapped on Little Cloud Mountain, he had seen Su Yusong and Zhuomuzha in the study of the art saint. The fake sword saint had held a sword in his hand, a strange long sword with a rusty surface. It seemed that she had placed the sword on Cloud Mountain and collected it along with the treasures in the Palace of Universe. However, it was useless to think about it now. After such a brief shock, he pounced on it again and shouted, "How about this sword? Take another one." The Tao Lord finally realized the power of this treasure. He turned around and fled again. It was just a few short breaths. The Tao Lord who had just been awe-inspiring became a stray dog who fled in panic. However, this time it was easier for him to escape than the last time. This was because Li Yunxin did not have any treasures to chase after him. The two of them chased each other in the sky. Soon they had traveled nearly 100 miles and finally left the group of demon kings behind. However, no one dared to go forward to watch the show. Both the Tao Lord and Li Yunxin were too strange. This was the first time the demon kings realized that the dragons were indeed unfathomable. There were too many secrets hidden in their bodies, and even the methods they used were unimaginable. However, they did not wait for long. About a dozen breaths later, when the Fiend Lord, Bai Yunxin, and the ninth young master decided to chase after them to see what was going on, a white light shone from the sky. Li Yunxin appeared from the white light and returned to the sight of the demon kings. However, the white clothes he was wearing now seemed to have turned into golden clothes. That was the golden blood of the dragons. He held a head in his hand. The face was ferocious, but it was covered by the golden blood. He stood in the air and looked at the demon kings in silence and sternly. Then he raised his hand and threw the head down. "I have killed one of Tao Wu's true bodies. That's its head. Well, he's lucky to have got away so fast. However, he can't escape either. After tonight, I will still find him and kill him." At this point, the Daelord's faint voice came from the sky. "Kid, you can be arrogant for now." Li Yunxin raised the sword in his hand and pointed to the distance. "Then come back and die." No one knew what the Tao Lord said, but the voice went further and further away and finally disappeared. He did not manage to kill the Tao Lord. However, it was reasonable. The two of them had similar cultivation levels and were both Dragon Son. Moreover, the Tao Lord was not seriously injured like Hatred. At first, he did not have any weaknesses. Since he was a profound realm great demon and wanted to protect his own life, it would be very difficult to kill him if he did not have the right time in the right place. However, he was actually able to chase a profound realm Tao Lord to the point of fleeing and even kill an incarnation. Such terrifying combat ability was really shocking. Many demons were shocked. However, they were not the only ones who were shocked. In the shadow of a short tree 10 miles away, Daoist Qingshui frowned. Her eyes never left Li Yunxin. She had seen everything from him chasing the Tao Lord to him showing off his power in front of the demons. Therefore, she knew that he did not actually kill the Daelord's incarnation. He destroyed the Mother and Earth Universe plate and the Cloud Mountain left the ground. As a result, the restriction on this battlefield was eliminated. Without the prohibition, the Tao Lord could escape very fast with his terrifying fiend god body. However, he had lost an arm. If Li Yunxin wanted to chase him, he could catch up with him. However, it might take a few hours or a few days. Now that the demons here were thinking about him, he could not just leave like this. Therefore, he decisively stopped, drew ahead and brought it back to deceive others. This was indeed his usual style. He thought that the Tao Lord could not wait to escape. Naturally, he would not come back to confront him. Seeing this, Daoist Qingshui seemed to be talking to himself and also to Manager Wang. How could it be? Daoist Qingshui seemed to have a unique way of distinguishing between Li Yunxin's, that person, and not that person. But what exactly was this way even Manager Wang did not know. But at least tonight, he knew that the situation was a little strange in his master's eyes. Li Yunxin did not pass any of the previous tests. So he was disappointed with him and planned to abandon him. Unexpectedly, he passed the final and decisive test, and did not die. Manager Wang did not know what the prohibition on the fiend god body of the Tao Lord meant. But he knew that Li Yunxin could not be affected by the prohibition. This ability was very important to his master. Therefore, his master, who was always calm and decisive, also became hesitant. He thought for a while and said in a low voice, "Master, since it is not decided yet, why not go back first and think about it?" Daoist Qingshui thought for a while in the dark and said, "Summon him." Look at Li Yunxin. Manager Wang was slightly stunned. "Master, you mean?" "Yes." Thus, this capable assistant, Moon Enju, the big shopkeeper of Yu country and Qing country, was stunned for a while before saying, "Master, this is not appropriate." He had followed Daoist Qingshui for many years and had always been respectful and cautious. It was rare to see him not carrying out an order and even doubting it. However, Daoist Qingshui did not show any change in his emotions. He only said, "There is nothing inappropriate. You will think of it too. Summon him." Shopkeeper Wang sighed softly in the darkness. In the end, he put his hand into his sleeve. He did not know what method or item he used. After 3 breaths he said, "He already knows." Thus, the two of them had nothing else to say. They stood quietly in the dark and looked at Li Yunxin, who was 10 miles away. After about 2 breaths, the insects that had quietened down because of their previous conversation started to chirp again. They chirped for about 3 breaths and their voices suddenly became softer. A figure appeared silently in the dark behind Daoist Qingshui and said in a low voice, "My lord." It was a male voice. He did not sound old and his voice could be said to be clear. When he spoke, there seemed to be no change in his emotions and he was very calm. However, this calmness was not like the calmness of a quiet lake, but like the deathly stillness of a bay of stagnant water. Daoist Qingshui did not turn around. "Look at him again." The incomer raised his head to look at the situation 10 miles away. He only took a glance and said, "This is Li Yunxin. You've been paying attention to him these days." Daoist Qingshui was silent for a while before saying, "Then look at him now. Is he the Li Yunxin from before?" "Ever since he entered Qinghe County he has not been." The incomer answered. "A year ago." Daoist Qingshui said this and paused as if he was considering his words. "You told me that he should not really know nothing. He is extremely good at hiding. I have observed him for many years before coming to this conclusion." The man saw that Daoist Qingshui paused after saying this and knew that "my lord" was communicating with him. So he said calmly, "But without my lord's order I cannot test him. Just because I have this thought in my heart, I continue to observe and feel that there are more and more flaws in him. You have not mentioned these details before. Jun Shang has a myriad of affairs to attend to. This subordinate only needs to present the conclusion. I do not dare to use too many details to take up my lord's time." "Then tell me now." "Yes." The man thought for a while. "Actually, it is still a deduction. Li Yunxin hides very well, there are no flaws. The only suspicious thing is his temperament. He seems to be indifferent and aloof from worldly affairs, only interested in painting. But in reality he yearns for the outside world. This kind of yearning is very common in children, but he hides it again. He hides it very well but not well enough. From this, I realize that there should be something else hidden in his heart. But this is only my deduction, there is no evidence. I said the same deduction a year ago, so I did not mention the details." Daoist Qingshui was silent for a while before saying, "Your deduction is correct. Li Yunxin is indeed different from others. Otherwise he would not have achieved what he has today." Then the man said, "Is he really the person my lord is looking for? A quarter of an hour ago I thought not. But now I am not sure." She sighed softly. "He is really a scary variable, we need to continue observing for a while. But he should know some things by now, we can't just be bystanders anymore. We need a suitable opportunity to tell him some things in a situation that he and we can both accept. As for now..." Daoist Qingshui finally turned to look at the man. "What I want to ask you is, when that time comes, are you willing to tell him those things?" The man was silent. Daoist Qingshui smiled slightly. "Why? Seeing his current state, are you afraid?" The man moved his feet. After thinking for a while, he said in a low voice, "No. On the contrary. I'm very happy for him. She should be happy too." Shopkeeper Wang and Daoist Qingshui, who had been silent, looked at each other because of his words. Then shopkeeper Wang frowned. Didn't you already sever it?" There was finally some change in the man's voice. But there seemed to be a hint of melancholy. "It's always harder to do than to think. I don't want to sever it." These words seemed to have evoked something else in his heart. It was as if there was something at the bottom of the stagnant pool, floating to the surface again. He hesitated for a while. "My lord, What do you want him to do? Taoist Qing Shui clasped her hands behind her back and paced 2 steps in the shadows. I didn't want him to do anything at first, she said softly, at the same time slightly lowering her head as if she was thinking. I just wanted him to be a helper or a sacrifice. But then I found out that his condition was abnormal. I wanted to throw him away. But you insisted on observing him for a few more days, so I listened to you. Her words should have been directed to the man. So half a year ago I found out that he had something that surprised me, so I had high hopes for him. But half a year's time gave him a lot of choices. Although he dealt with all of them beautifully, none of them went according to my wishes. So I was disappointed again. At this point I can't make a rash decision. But at least I know that he might be a surprise. She turned to look at Li Yunxin and said softly, he might become the savior. If his heart is more ruthless than I thought. Chapter 566. Savior? Shopkeeper Wang and the man looked at each other. No one would have thought that their lord would use this term on Li Yunxin. He was indeed high-spirited and was considered one of the most powerful martial artists in the world. But to save the world, why? You will understand in the future. Taoist Qing Shui looked at Li Yunxin again, turned and walked into the shadows. If you want to stay, then stay a little longer. Old Wang, let's go. Shopkeeper Wang immediately turned and followed. The man hesitated for a moment but did not move. He was looking at Li Yunxin. His face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes were bright and piercing. He saw that after Li Yunxin threw away the Taoist lord's head, he stood quietly in the sky for a while and did not speak. After about 10 breaths, some of the monster kings started to leave. From the looks of it, he was not going to leave any more Dharma treasures behind. Moreover, these people were not friendly to Li Yunxin before, who was not afraid of being punished. Finally, the prohibition spell was gone. After the demon kings left, Li Yunxin only looked in the direction they went and didn't say anything. Therefore, more and more demons left in groups of 2s and 3s. In less than a quarter of an hour, most of the monster kings and monster generals had left. Some of them greeted the evil lord before they left. Some of them greeted Li Yunxin too. Some of them ignored both or only talked to the evil lord. In the end, there were only about 300 demons left. More than 100 of them were the evil lord's vassals. The remaining 200 were small demons with low cultivation. They were about the peak of the transcendent state and the beginning of the true state. Perhaps in the wilderness he could be considered a demon king that ruled over a region, but tonight he was really not enough. The reason why they didn't leave was not that they wanted to stay. These unlucky guys had squeezed to the front when Li Yunxin was fighting with the Lord of Taoism, intending to take advantage of him. Now that they were under Li Yunxin's nose and silently watched by him, it was not good for them to leave. They could only bite the bullet and wait for the time being. If there was nothing else, they would leave. Thus the battlefield slowly became deserted. More than 300 demons stood in the sky, a sea of raging flames below their feet. At this moment, if someone were to look up, it would be very difficult to see their figures clearly. Because above them, there was still a huge cloud mountain that was moving away. Under the contrast of the cloud mountain, these people were like a handful of dust. When the first demon king was about to leave, Li Yunxin's expression became lively. He sighed. It seems like you are the only ones who are fated. He looked at the evil lord, Bai Yunxin, and the 9th young master. Now let's talk about something important. Without waiting for their reply, he turned around and shouted, Brother Ji, Brother Lu, come out. Thank you for backing me up. A burst of hearty laughter was heard. Before the person arrived, his voice could be heard. Ha 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 ha, Brother Li is really awe-inspiring tonight. We've been watching for a whole night, but we couldn't help it all. This voice was powerful and contained a strong demonic power. Bai Yunxin, the 9th young master, and the other demons heard it and felt that his realm was unfathomable. When the evil lord heard it, he realized, this was the peak of the mystic realm. There were very few demons and cultivators in the mystic realm in the world. After this battle, it would be even rarer, not to mention the peak of the mystic realm. When he thought about how Li Yunxin addressed him as Brother Ji, he immediately knew that Li Yunxin was referring to the former emperor of the Li Kingdom, who became a ghost emperor in the peak of the mystic realm after his death. However, the moment he appeared in the world, he was chased by the Xianmen and was severely injured. Previously, when he appeared in the mountains, he was only around the mystic realm. Why did he return to the peak tonight? When this thought appeared in her mind, she looked at Li Yunxin. She saw Li Yunxin smile at her as if she could hear what she was thinking. Third sister guessed right. I took all the souls that Qionyou and hatred obtained by killing the heroes and cultivators in the world. But I'm not the kind of person they are. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I were to use this kind of underhanded means for my own benefit. He sighed bitterly and looked around at the many demons. So I divided a few of them to use. Most of them were given to third sister and brother G. Both of you are powerful cultivators in the peak of the mystic realm. You are a deterrent to the Xianmen in the human world. It will take a long time for you to recultivate after being seriously injured. I can't just sit back and do nothing. Some of them were given to the 9th young master. When he said this, he cupped his hands at the 9th young master and looked very serious. I used to have a grudge with the 9th young master, but now it's over. There are many things in the world and it's not easy to meet and know each other. I hope that there will be no disagreements between me and the Lord Tong Tian, and that we can be honest with each other. When he said these words, his tone was very sincere, and his expression was even more solemn. Anyone who saw it would feel that he was speaking the truth. Bai Yunxin blinked and looked at the 9th young master. No one knew what he was thinking. The 9th young master's reaction was interesting. At first he looked reserved. In fact, people would think that he didn't care about fiefs or titles. At least he didn't care very much. But when he heard what Li Yunxin said next, he looked a little embarrassed. It seemed that he didn't know how to deal with it. In the end he didn't say anything. He just pursed his lips and looked at Li Yunxin. Finally, he raised his hand and cupped his hands at him, nodding silently. At this time, Emperor Li and Emperor Yi finally showed up. However, it wasn't just 2 of them but 4 people. Besides the 2 ghost emperors, there was a Taoist priest with 5 strands of long beard on the rolling black cloud. His hair was black and shiny. He looked about 40 or 50 years old. It was Lu Gongzan. Now he was full of spirit and seemed to have recovered. There was also a chicken spirit with a broken arm. But there seemed to be a small hand growing out of the broken arm. It was white and tender, the size of a palm. It looked very strange and gave people goosebumps. But it also meant that the serious injuries that almost killed him had recovered. The broken arm was even going to grow back. When the 4 of them showed up, Li Yunxin stood in front of the demons on the auspicious cloud. He talked with confidence and assurance. It was like he was the moon surrounded by the stars. Seeing this scene, they paused for a while and then went straight into the crowd of demons. Emperor Li's aura was majestic. The demons with low cultivation hurried to make way for them. They were like officials serving the emperor on a tour. Lu Gongzan and the chicken spirit bowed to Li Yunxin on the black cloud. Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I gave some to Brother Lu. When Brother Lu was in the city of Wei, he entrusted his life to me. We are friends. Since he used to be the emperor, I will help him reach the peak of the realm of truth. In the future he can go anywhere in the world." The Emperor Lu Qingyang bowed to Li Yunxin solemnly and said, "I will remember your kindness." The rest, Li Yunxin said calmly, "When you were fighting against Xianmen, I faked my death and escaped into Yunshan. I met with the guards in the mountain and had a big fight. Let's not talk about the result. But at least their evil plan failed. These Taoists planned to use the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate to kill you on the battlefield. The 2 skeletons that you saw suddenly rolled into the mountain and the chi dynamic in the battlefield was messed up. It was all because of the Taoists of Yunshan. At that time I was dealing with them while slowly seizing control over the treasure. Only then did I finally remove the restriction. I can't tell you the inside story. But when I was fighting with the Taoists of Xianmen, I got lucky and entered the realm of perfect harmony immortal. Then, I used the remaining demon power to break through the realm of mystery and achieved what I have now." Emperor Li said loudly, "That's right. Not only that, Brother Li can be called the first hero in the world. According to the demon power you said, that beautiful lady and I returned to the peak of the realm of mystery. If Brother Li took all of it, he would be more than the peak of the realm of mystery. I, Jilan, have never seen such a noble and broad-minded person in my life. As the saying goes, people carry people in the sedan chair." This powerful monster praised Li Yunxin so fiercely. The monsters who were trembling in fear also applauded. However, the evil spirit and Bai Yunxin both knew that Li Yunxin was lying. The skeletons rolling into the mountain, the inhibition, and the chi dynamic in the battlefield were all his tricks in Yunshan. But at this moment the evil spirit couldn't see through Li Yunxin anymore. What the Emperor Li said was the truth. If Li Yunxin used all the demon power for himself, he would be at the peak of the realm of mystery. But he was actually able to resist this terrifying temptation. She could guess what was on Li Yunxin's mind. So what if he was at the peak of the realm of mystery? The Zither Master, the evil spirit, and Emperor Li were all at the peak of the realm of mystery. Didn't they lose or get injured? This realm was very strong, but not so strong that he could be invincible in the world alone. After all, even saints could perish in such a situation. Between power and influence, Li Yunxin chose the former. He used this power to exchange for her not to be his enemy for the time being. They could even be considered as friends. And he also exchanged for the friendship of her silly ninth brother. From the hatred of life and death to today's reversal, Li Yunxin was really a demon who played with people's hearts. And he won the friendship of a ghost emperor at the peak of the realm of mystery and the peak of the realm of truth. And in the future, their words would be very influential among the monsters and demons. In the past, Li Yunxin was almost besieged by the whole world. But now, when he sent all these forces out, the situation was immediately reversed. He also gained powerful allies and help. Even if this support could only last for a short time, it should be enough for his intelligence. This was the vision of a true expert, to be able to endure the terrible temptation and see where the real benefits were. But, what is he going to do? The evil spirit said this in his heart. 5 kilometers away, the person hiding in the shadows was also muttering to himself. After saying this, he sighed. But it didn't sound like he was worried, but emotional. Now Li Yunxin looked the same as he did half a year ago. Half a year ago it was the end of spring, but now it was late autumn. His eyebrows didn't change, but his temperament changed greatly. Now he stood in the night sky, stepping on auspicious clouds, wearing a white robe, and holding a shining sword in his hand. His temperament was calm, and he talked with confidence in the face of a group of scary monsters and demons. But among those monsters and demons there was Long's son, his former enemies, the ghost cultivator that the emperor transformed into, and many other leaders who were entangled with other demon kings and demon generals. But now all these people were listening to him quietly. Maybe some of them were unwilling, maybe some of them had a lot of complaints. But they didn't dare to say anything. Actually, the word, control, was enough for him to do this much. In just half a year. The person in the shadows raised his head to look at the sky. The battle between the monsters and the cultivators had stirred up thick clouds in the sky. Then this place was surrounded by restrictive spells, and the thick clouds didn't dissipate. But now the restrictive spells disappeared, and the ground was on fire again. The clouds slowly dispersed, revealing the full moon behind it. But there was still a mysterious light in the sky that hadn't completely faded. The mysterious light covered the full moon with a faint blue color, looking very eerie and scary. But when this person looked up, his eyes seemed to be full of tenderness, and maybe a little sadness and regret. He looked at the blue moon for a while and sighed again. If you see it, you should be happy. As soon as he said this, he heard a soft voice. Hee hee, if you miss her so much, why did you do that kind of thing? A man. Oh my, he's so cool, oh my. He should give me a godly position. The person looked to his side. He saw a calico cat walking back and forth on the fallen leaves with its tail in the air. It squinted its eyes and also looked 10 miles away. He frowned. You should stay with him. The calico cat turned around and crouched down. Oh my, I can't. He's suspicious of me now. Hee, I don't know what to do. Sigh. No. I need to find someone. Oh my, I remember I lost something. Oh my, what is it? She began to roll around as she spoke. The person didn't pay attention to her anymore. He looked at Li Yunxin one more time, then turned around to leave. But in the blink of an eye, he didn't know if it was an illusion. He felt that Li Yunxin, who was 10 miles away, also glanced in his direction. His gaze paused for a breath's time. The man wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He raised his head and looked at Li Yunxin. But Li Yunxin's gaze had already moved away. The man didn't know if Li Yunxin was really looking in their direction just now, or if he was glancing at the demons when he was talking, and his gaze paused on a demon for a while. After the evil lord and the man had the question, what is he going to do? Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Then he looked around at the demons and lowered his voice. Many people are at the turning point of history, but they don't know it. They have to wait for many years to come to their senses and sigh about why they didn't grasp the opportunity firmly in the beginning. Li Yunxin suddenly changed his tone. He said these words slowly and paused for a while, as if he wanted to deepen their impression. Then he said, I left everyone here today so that you won't have such regrets. He raised his hand and pointed at the demons who were left behind by his gaze and were now confused. You are witnessing the birth of a little demon guardian. Congratulations on becoming a part of history. The big demons looked at each other. Lu Gongzan and Shanji showed a mysterious smile on their faces. The demons with low cultivation were even more confused. They didn't know whether little demon guardian, was a new way of cursing people, or Li Yunxin was joking with a disgusting name. But after all, they knew, according to their past experience, when the big demons looked for them and asked them to do something with a smile, it was usually not a good thing. If it was a light case, they would lose their cave abode's offerings. If it was a heavy case, they would lose their lives. The demon king, who had the highest cultivation among the demons and could barely be considered as a perfected person, plucked up his courage, cupped his fists and apologized. Dragon King above. We all know Dragon King's good intention. But we have no abilities and are all vulgar people who have never seen the world. Now that we are lucky to be alive, we are already very grateful for Dragon King's forgiveness. But I'm afraid, we can't be driven by Dragon King and we won't be of much use. Li Yunxin smiled kindly and interrupted him. It's exactly what we need, people like you who can't do well and have no abilities. Otherwise, why is it called the Little Demon Protection Association? Chapter 567. The Little Monsters Protection Association. The monsters were stunned when they heard the name. These guys were not very cultured and didn't have the ability to understand. They looked at each other in confusion. Li Yunxin had expected this reaction. He waved his hand and said, I know you don't understand. The night is still long, let me explain it to you. You have to know, the world is not the same as it used to be. You all know this, but you probably haven't experienced it yet. It doesn't matter. You will feel the change soon. But before that, there are some things you should think about. For example, in the future, when you demons walk around the world without the cultivators of the celestial sect looking for trouble with you, what do you plan to do? These monsters had been busy trying to get the treasures and save their lives. They didn't have time to think about the question Li Yunxin asked. But now they realized that it was indeed a question they should think about and face. Actually, it wasn't a question. It wasn't a question to these monsters, it meant, we have to go to the ancestral hall and eat all the fruits. The first one to speak was a monster with a slender body. There was hair on the back of his hands and face. Maybe he was like the monster king under hatred, Lord Renjun. They were both monkeys. But this one's cultivation was far from that of a Lord Renjun. He had just reached the transcendent state. To be able to survive these successive catastrophes, it could be said that he was very lucky. He was laughed at as soon as he said it. They laughed at his lack of ambition. He also felt ashamed. He scratched his head and said, we have to eat the fruits, we have to stay in the ancestral hall. Oh, we have to ask the villagers to come and offer offerings every day. Hearing this, the demons laughed even harder and the atmosphere eased up a little. Another monster king at the peak of the transcendent state mocked him, you little monkey, you only have the ambition of a needle tip. Didn't you hear what Lord Wei said? The Xianmen have been destroyed, the world is ours. Why would you eat the fruits and sleep in the ancestral hall? If it were me, he didn't know what kind of monster he was. He was round and plump. Although he had a human face, his eyes were slender, and he looked like a charmingly naive bear. My current abode is next to the Qin Kingdom's Feng County. When I get back, I'll go to the government office and eat that old bastard up. That old bastard invited a few Kenzo swordsmen to cause trouble for me. Fortunately, I'm lucky. Then replace his yamen with my abode of Immortal's Cave. Tell all the children in my cave to enter the city. Let's have a feast for 3 days first. There were thousands of people in Fengqing County. If they were all captured and locked up, they would be able to eat for a year and a half. After eating Feng County, I'll eat Luoyang County, and after eating Luoyang County, I'll eat Dingqing. Ayaya. The true bodies of the demons were different, so their interests and personalities varied greatly. However, there was one thing that was surprisingly consistent: their love for human flesh and blood. Not all demons liked to eat humans. There were also some who didn't like to eat it and only liked to use it. But most of them still loved the unique taste of the human body. Perhaps this kind of feeling did not exist. Perhaps what they loved was just a feeling that was hard to come by, a feeling of helplessness and fear in others. But in the end, the rarer something was, the more precious it was. The shark fins in the goblets of high officials and nobles, without the carefully cooked soup and water, would there really be any special taste? Demons transformed into human form in order to continue their cultivation. They also believed in the principle of form to form, and eating humans could make their skills more refined. From the demons' point of view, there was not much difference between them and those who ate hot kidney to strengthen their foundation. The Monster King's description of the future resonated with a large number of people. Before, they were left behind by Li Yunxin and did not know whether it was a blessing or a disaster. Now that they were slightly relieved and talked about this kind of topic, it was probably equivalent to a group of men in the secular world talking about women. For a moment, everyone expressed their opinions and the atmosphere was very lively. Li Yunxin smiled and watched them talk about these things without saying a word. After a full quarter of an hour, the noise gradually subsided. These demons had low cultivation, so they were naturally timid. Their ability to observe people's words and expressions was also better than that of the Monster King. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to live to this day. Then they thought of something. It was said that this Wei River Lord used to be a human. Now they talked about how to eat humans in front of Wei River Lord. Wasn't it like an old man eating arsenic, tired of living? Thinking of this, cold sweat oozed out of their foreheads, and they did not dare to say a word. After waiting for them to fall silent, Li Yunxin smiled again. I didn't know that you could eat humans in so many different ways. The demons felt a chill in their hearts, knowing that they were in trouble. Unexpectedly, this Wei River Dragon King said again, but in my opinion, your style is not exquisite enough. When ordinary people in the secular world talk about food, it is nothing more than meat and fish. Jiggling, oily slices of fatty meat, they found it satisfying in their mouths, but the nobles only felt sick of it. You are the same. Speaking of eating humans, I know two people who are good at it. Not only do you eat different people separately, you also eat different parts of them separately. You also have to pay attention to the heat, mood, weather. When he said this, he glanced at the ninth young master. Compared to them, you are like eating raw meat and drinking blood. Moreover, you probably won't be able to eat raw meat and drinking blood for long. His gaze turned cold and he said in a deep voice, you were originally guarding in the forest. When you were free to kidnap a person, you would tremble with fear, afraid that a Taoist or a swordsman would come looking for trouble. Now that the restrictions are gone, they're completely unbridled, and they've thought of how they're going to do whatever they want. The greater demon kings with higher cultivation bases who left earlier were probably 10 or even 100 times more resentful and depressed than you are. You want to eat a village or a town, but they probably want to massacre the city for fun. You have seen the situation on the battlefield these few days. When the great demon kings use their divine abilities, how terrifying is their power. After that, the world will be empty, and the great demon kings will fight for territory. I am afraid that thousands of people will die in the blink of an eye. If they destroy a few cities every now and then, the human dynasty will soon collapse. The order will collapse, and the great demon kings will rise together with bandits and refugees. War will burn the sky and no one will work, so there will be a terrible famine. If there is a famine, if the weather is good, then it would be fine. But the Midland is a vast place, and many places in the Midland have to rely on those spirit creatures for their power. You don't know this. You only think that sprinkling some rain from the sky every now and then to trick people to worship you is nothing. But in fact, many small demon kings have done this, and they have become a part of the natural ecology of this world. Li Yunxin sighed and said, I messed up the natural power of the world with the heaven and earth Mother Earth plate, but it is not a disaster. The death of all the cultivators in the Taoist sect is not a disaster. The real disaster is that almost all the great demon kings have died. Have you ever thought about this? The group of spirit creatures remained silent, looking at each other again. Of course they had never thought about this. Even the evil king, the ninth young master, Emperor Li, and Emperor Yi hadn't thought about this. Even in the world where Li Yunxin came from, the theory of ecological system had only existed for about 100 years, not to mention in this world. There was no problem of overdevelopment in this world. Therefore, he didn't expect them to be enlightened after listening to his words. However, after Li Yunxin said so much and paused for a while, he glanced at the group of spirit creatures. Still none of them spoke. They remained silent, with their own thoughts in their minds. Seeing this, Jihao sighed in his head and looked at Lu Gongzan. He didn't need to say it. He didn't even need to give him a wink. Lu Laodao said immediately, after listening to what Dragon King said, I am enlightened. But, what does this have to do with the Little Demons Protection Association that Dragon King mentioned? Li Yunxin sighed and said, people only look at the strong, but few people realize that the root of this world is the weak. For example, if there weren't many little demons living by the lake or in the temple in the forest, pretending to be holy, bringing rain and clouds to bless the people, there wouldn't be such a good era. It's the same. If there aren't many ordinary people in this world, how can you look like a human, wear clothes and enjoy good food? If demons are allowed to run wild in the world, they will soon disappear. Then there will only be mountains and beasts left in the world. Before, you can still admire the prosperity of the human world and secretly taste some meat. By then, you can only live in the wilderness with those idiots in your cave abodes. Is that the life you want? The group of spirit creatures thought for a while and immediately shook their heads. No. Think about it. In the future, when the big spirit creatures fight for the world, it will be like this. They will drive many spirit creatures to open the way for them and fight for them. Most of you will die, and in the end, the spirit creature kings will reap the benefits. By then, you won't even be able to live in seclusion in the mountains. Is that the life you want? The group of spirit creatures said again, No. Li Yunxin clapped his hands and laughed. So, since we are of the same mind, old Lu, tell them about this little demon protection. After saying that, he waved his hand and Lu Gongzan was immediately pulled to his cloud. The group of spirit creatures looked at him with a strange expression. After all, he was the only person present. Now he was talking about the little demon protection among the spirit creatures. It was very strange. Although he didn't know what this Lu Gongzan was thinking, he was someone who walked in the Jianghu. It was a necessary skill for him to talk to people and talk to ghosts. In terms of eloquence, he was much better than these stupid spirit creatures. He stood in front of the group of spirit creatures and cupped his hands. There wasn't even the slightest bit of panic on his face. Instead, he showed a humble smile and said, "Greetings, everyone. Our Little Demon Protection Association, or Little Demon Protection for short, is mainly to protect the interests of all spirit creatures. Among the countries in the Midland, there are many spirit creatures who become human beings every year. There are many of them, but their living conditions are worrying. One problem is that the habitats they rely on for survival are destroyed. They are often swallowed by the big spirit creatures. Another problem is that they have natural enemies. The nearby spirit creature kings and spirit creature generals don't want to see another competitor next to them. So, once they find the spirit creature, they will immediately, destroy it to ensure that they don't have to worry about it. I stumbled and gained some cultivation experience, and now I have some power to protect myself. Either they are recruited by the spirit creature kings to become spirit creatures, or they die in a battle, or they are killed by some Taoist priests or swordsmen passing by. It's simply too difficult to survive and achieve what you have today, like all of you." At this point, Lu Gongzan sighed. "Just as we are talking, how many spirit creatures have been born, and how many spirit creatures have died? Just thinking about it and looking at the data, I feel shocked. The protection of the spirit creatures, especially now, is already of the utmost urgency. What is the main purpose of our association?" He coughed. "The main purpose is to regulate the behavior and habits of us spirit creatures through some rules and regulations. Through this method, we gain a strong sense of unity. We recognize each other, help each other, fight for our own rights, and contribute to the stability and prosperity of this world." The group of spirit creatures was confused. They felt that he had said a lot, but he didn't say anything. Li Yunxin applauded. "Well said, old Lu." One of the smarter spirit creatures thought for a while and vaguely felt that it was a good idea, but he couldn't make up his mind. He said loudly, "Hey, this person, what benefits do we get?" Lu Gongzan said with a straight face, "The benefits are endless. I'll just choose a few. First, you people are fortunate enough to witness the birth of spirit creatures today. You are like-minded people like me and the Dragon King. From now on, we are comrades. Since we are comrades, we can stay by the Dragon King's side for a long time. Now that chaos is about to arrive, staying by the Dragon King's side can ensure your safety. Isn't that a great benefit?" The spirit creatures were stunned. The first benefit was that they understood what he was saying. In fact, he wanted them to become Lord Wei River's spirit creatures and spirit creatures. They had to abandon their former territories and run to Lord Wei River's territory. But many of them were self-proclaimed kings in the past, so they didn't feel constrained. But now, looking at Lord Wei River Li Yunxin behind Lu Gongzan, he was lightly flicking his finger on the blade of his sword while looking at them sinisterly. Who dared to jump out and say, "Not good?" Lu Gongzan continued, "The second benefit is that once you enter this spirit creature sphere, you can't do as you please and eat people as you please. Instead, you have to do more good deeds in your territory and accumulate more merit. This way, the population in your territory will flourish, and your cultivation will rise. Isn't that great? So, you have to know that the most loved and hated person in this world is a strict teacher. If I let you do as you please, you will only feel good for a while, but in the end you will end up dead. How tragic would that be? Now that you have met Lord Wei River, isn't it good for you to be a strict teacher?" The spirit creatures were in an uproar. What kind of **T benefit was this? They came all the way here to risk their lives to seek riches and fortune, to overthrow the Xianmen and enjoy the blood of the human world. Who knew that this spirit creature sphere was even more perverted than the Xianmen and actually wanted them to do more good deeds? There was no way he could tolerate this. Immediately, a spirit creature king shouted, "Bullsh *T. What kind of benefit is this? I don't want to serve you." Hearing this, Li Yunxin was shocked and shouted behind Lu Gongzan, "Aya! There's a fish that slipped through the net." "What did you say? You're the accomplice of that rebellious Dao Lord?" The spirit creature king was stunned for a while before shouting, "What accomplice? I'm saying, how dare you slander Lord Shinryu?" Li Yunxin shouted, "There's no reason not to kill you today." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand shot out with a hum. They couldn't see how the sword light moved. They only felt a light breeze and the demon's body was split in half, falling into the sea of fire on the ground. Li Yunxin reached out to catch the sword that flew back to him and said, "An unpleasant interlude. What did anyone say?" The monsters immediately shook their heads and praised Lu Gongzan for the second benefit. At this moment they learned that Lord Wei River could turn hostile as easily as eating and drinking tea. There was no sign at all, so no one dared to mess with him again. Lu Gongzan happily stroked his beard and said, "As for the third benefit, it's..." Speaking of this, he looked at Li Yunxin. What he said before was mostly what they had discussed in Dongting Lake before, plus some of his improvisations. However, he knew Li Yunxin's mind. Now he said it casually and methodically, so Li Yunxin was very satisfied. But when he said more benefits, he hesitated. In fact, there were no benefits. Li Yunxin's creation of such a thing was built on the basis of ensuring that humanity would prosper and continue to have a future. To these fiendish demons, what else could they gain other than the power of faith and a high cultivation base? Chapter 568. At this time Li Yunxin said, "There are benefits to be gained." He stepped forward on the cloud and waved his hand. Immediately, a sword ray appeared in front of him. But when they looked closely they saw that it was not a ray but a real flying sword. 108 shining flying swords were lined up in the sky. Just looking at it made them feel cold. The demons stared at it. These guys did not have the guts to leave but stay because of Li Yunxin's gaze, because they were a bunch of useless trash. Maybe some were at the peak of transcendent state, some were at the beginning of true state. But cultivation level was not the only standard to measure one's strength. Some were timid, some were weak, some had weak techniques, some were weak, and so on. Therefore, when Li Yunxin fought with the Dao Lord, they did not get any benefits. Now that they saw Li Yunxin throw out these flying swords, their eyes widened. They forgot about their previous dissatisfaction. If the benefits that Wei River Lord was talking about were these flying swords, this was a proper, undamaged treasure. It was much better than the broken pieces and damaged toys from before. At this time Li Yunxin said again, "Of course we can see the benefits. These 108 flying swords form a sword array. I will give them to you first." After saying this, he flipped his hand. The flying swords fell into the sea of fire. The demons rushed forward and fought with each other. He smiled and watched for a while, then took out a bead. This essence sphere bead is also a treasure. It is said that there are many transformations and there are 36 of them. I will give it to you as well. Then he rubbed his hands and the bead turned into many shiny beads, which fell down like raindrops. Previously he threw out 108 flying swords. Now he turned the essence sphere bead into 106 beads, which corresponded to the 214 demons present. The remaining 100 demon kings and demon kings could only watch enviously. They were under the Fiend Lord, they did not dare to participate in this. Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I'm also very happy to see everyone fighting so hard to get into the association. I think the elders of the Little Demon Protection are even happier. Third sister, since you've become an elder of our association, it's not good for you to ask your friends to leave empty-handed. Come, here's a small token of my appreciation." As he spoke, he waved his hand and took out a set of unknown flying swords and threw them down as well. But in fact, the evil king didn't know anything about the elders. She was coldly observing Li Yunxin's actions from the sidelines. Who would have thought that she would suddenly be dragged into this mess? However, while Li Yunxin was talking, he was working at the same time. By the time she was stunned, the demon kings and demon generals under her command had also gone to fight for it. Li Yunxin's words made them feel that their Jun Shang had really agreed to this matter. Even if he hadn't, for the sake of these treasures, they had to force their Jun Shang to agree. Li Yunxin looked at Emperor Li and Emperor Yi. He cupped his hands and said, "My two brothers. The evil king of the dragons, the Lord Tong Tian, and the adopted daughter of the Golden Rock are now the honorary president and guest elders of the Little Demon Protection. Are you interested in joining our association? The Little Demon Protection and the Ghost Kingdom will support each other and form an alliance? Emperor Li waved his hand and said, "Hey, what are you talking about? My brother Li was taken care of by you before. I think you and I are congenial. Brother Li's business is my business. Of course I have no objections." Li Yunxin immediately clapped his hands and laughed. Good, good, good. The Little Demon Protection has just been established today. Immediately we have 3 elders in the mystic realm and 2 elders in the true realm. In this chaotic world we can't be underestimated, Mountain Chicken. As he said this he waved his hand again. The chicken spirit was taken up by him on the cloud. This is my disciple and a former demon general under my command. He went through fire and water with me and made great contributions. Now he and Lu Gongzan will temporarily take care of the Little Demon Protection for me. Lu Gongzan was stunned. He said in a low voice, "Brother Xenu." Li Yunxin laughed and said in a loud voice, "Now that this matter is over, I'm heading east. Today the Little Demon Protection was not established by me. I got the approval from the Lord of Shinryu. Otherwise, how would I dare to bring my 3rd sister here? So, I'm going to the Dragon Island in 2 days." When he said that he wanted to establish the Little Demon Protection and make a bunch of people elders, no one took it seriously. Li Yunxin was wild and unruly, but he was a thoughtful person. Sometimes he did something casually but it was after careful consideration. But sometimes he created something with great fanfare, for example the dragon cult in City of Wei, but it was just a cover-up. Tonight he suddenly created something on the spur of the moment. Both the evil lord and Bai Yunxin felt that he was trying to cover up his other motives. But they didn't expect him to mention the approval from the Lord of Shinryu. When they heard this they knew it was bullshit. Why would the Lord of Shinryu ask him to do such things? The evil lord sighed and said, "Lord of Wei River, just do what you want to do. But I, the president and the elders?" He paused and turned to look at the group of demons. At this moment the demons were fighting with each other. They had already divided up most of the treasures left behind by Li Yunxin. The treasures he left behind were just enough for each demon. But even a fool would know that it wouldn't be evenly distributed. Therefore those who didn't get the treasures looked at him eagerly, wanting him to give them something more. Seeing this scene he knew that even if these demons didn't say anything, their sincerity and loyalty were almost zero. They didn't leave because they were afraid that Li Yunxin would kill them. At the same time they hoped to get some benefits. How could such a group of demons succeed? So he continued, "If it's really what the Lord of Shinryu wants me to do, I might have to accept it. But now that you and I know about this," Li Yunxin waved his hand, "Third sister, you don't believe me?" The evil lord smiled, "You don't need to do this between people like us. The Lord of Immortals won't care about this. Even if you're doing it seriously, you won't have the chance to tell the Lord of Immortals. I don't like to cause trouble. Since the situation has developed to this point, I've helped you a lot. From now on, it's better if we don't have anything to do with each other." She had always been a proud person. Among the many things that happened tonight, if it wasn't for the sake of protecting Bai Yunxin, she wouldn't have chosen to swallow her anger and follow Li Yunxin's arrangements. At least she wouldn't have accepted it after she was schemed against and was treated well. At this point everything was over. She had returned to the peak of the mystic realm. She was already very kind not to look for Li Yunxin to settle the score. Why would she have the mood to continue playing with him? So after saying this she sighed, "I hope that Lord Wei River, this little demon will protect you and everything will go smoothly. I won't accompany you for now." After saying this she turned around and was about to leave. Bai Yunxin reached out to pull her as if she wanted to persuade her. People in the secular world said that girls tended to be outgoing. Now this female demon could be considered to be the best example. At this time a female voice suddenly said, "I know about this matter." Then the sky suddenly shone with golden light. It was as if the sun had risen earlier. The sky was illuminated by this light, and the fire on the ground seemed to be suppressed by the light. The fire instantly weakened. Everything within a radius of several hundred miles was exposed, and everything was plated with a layer of flowing gold. Some kind of aura spread out. This aura was different from that of the terrifying aura of a high-ranked demon. That kind of aura could only make people feel afraid, tremble, and want to bow their heads in worship. It was very difficult for them to have any other feelings. However, this aura was more magnificent and gentle. Majesty and kindness coexisted, like the light cast by the sun in the sky that nourished all living things. The feelings of awe rose from the bottom of people's hearts like a tide, and quickly surrounded everyone in the field. Those little demons couldn't help but become silent, couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the golden light, and couldn't help but bow their heads. If they were on the ground now, they would probably immediately prostrate themselves. Because there was a figure in the golden light. This figure was very blurry and couldn't be seen clearly. They only knew that it was wearing a bright robe, and there were 2 bright horns on its forehead. However, no one, including the evil lord, suspected the identity of the person who came. With such power, even the evil spirit lord found it hard to muster any will to resist. He even had to spend some effort to maintain his independent mind. If it wasn't the Lord of Demons and the true dragon god, who else could it be? This was also one of the reasons why the 9 of them rarely came into contact with Lord Shinryu. Under her aura and light, the desire to submit in their hearts was almost uncontrollable, and it was constantly fighting with their rationality. The evil lord immediately circulated his demon power throughout his body to make his mind clearer. Then he bowed and said loudly, "Your subject welcomes the Lord Shinryu's majestic presence." After saying this, she looked at Li Yunxin as she bowed. She couldn't suppress the shock in her mind, and it was almost impossible to express it in words. Li Yunxin had many tricks up his sleeves, and she wasn't surprised that he was able to achieve what he had today. But, did he really get the approval of the true Dragon Celestial by creating this so-called Little Fiendish Demon Protection Association? In fact, this wasn't what surprised her. If he had the chance and time to tell this idea to the Lord Shinryu with his eloquence, he would probably be able to achieve this goal. The real problem was, how did he get the Lord Shinryu to pay attention to him, and how did he get the Lord Shinryu, who had not appeared in the world for almost 1,000 years, to appear here for this matter? She really wanted to find a trace of panic or surprise on Li Yunxin's face. But, there was only a calm and respectful expression on his face. It was as if he really invited the Lord Shinryu here, and had already predicted this situation. But the problem was, if he had the Lord Shinryu's help, why would he spend so much effort to come up with so many schemes, such as faking his death on the battlefield? Thinking of this, a bold idea suddenly came to her mind. Maybe, something important happened during the short period of time that Li Yunxin was in the Cloudy Mountains. With his mere cultivation level, he suddenly controlled the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate and reversed the situation in one fell swoop. He made use of the things that so many people worked so hard to manage. There must be some inside story behind this. When he was in the Cloudy Mountains, what exactly happened? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.